You're on.
All right. Jeff, Misty, and I met last Thursday to go through the revenue and then the expenses. And as Misty always does, you have the hard copy printouts that she provided. For folks that are enthusiastic about using your laptops, there is more information available to you because she provides the spreadsheets also. So what I want to share with you is that after we went through the revenue and the budgets, the expenses, the departments, came up with a projected revenue. This is in the general fund. The enterprise funds are separate. Projected revenue in the general fund is $3,499,155. The projected expenses are $3,968,963 for a deficit of $469,808.
Give me the section.
It's on. He's just rattling off what's already on your spreadsheet.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
And I had told council that what I would do once we had the budget figures is I would do what I refer to as a lights and waters budget. What do we need to keep the lights and the water on? So I went through each of the departments and pulled out of them what, in my opinion, didn't meet the lights and water. What do we need to keep the lights and water on? After doing that, got the deficit down from $469,808, or from $469,808 down to $60,558. So that's the discussion you folks are going to need to have. Jeff has some thoughts about possibly increasing some revenue, but as we go through each of the departments, then I'll explain to you what I pulled out of there, and then you folks will decide whether you agree with that, whether you want something different, but we'll do that as we get into each of the departments. We'll go through revenue tonight. If there's an opportunity to increase some revenue, that will certainly help. But we started out with a deficit of $469,808. Doing the lights and water theme, got that down to $60,558.
Thank you for all that hard work.
Any questions? All right, Misty, why don't you take it from there? And Jeff, if there's anything you want to add?
I won't be shy.
All right, so as I do every year, I've provided a guide to the City of Hot Springs budget by fund. So you have that cover sheet. Reminder, there's 6 different separate governmental funds, either established by statute or ordinance of the city. And then enterprise and proprietary funds. We're going to start with the general fund, but we're going to go over all of the revenue funds. And then besides those 6 governmental funds, you have 5 enterprise funds that we'll be reviewing. I also provided some budget notes. These are just what you're seeing right now. These are not final. Please do not think that this is written in stone. These are just some of the larger items that are outside of a normal or have changed that I thought were worth highlighting or mentioning to you as we have these conversations. And then as we go through the revenue, I just want to remind council that the way, and those of you that have been to the budget workshops know I didn't make this up, that this is a practice. The way we estimate revenues is modest, based on proven revenues. The way we estimate expenses is not worst case scenario or unknown expenses, but we don't have to be as modest because we want to allow enough so that they can do what they have to do through the year. So we'll start with the general fund revenues. Stop me if you have any questions about the way something's calculated, or if you notice maybe a year-to-date amount as you're going through the worksheets. Just jump out, stop me, don't hesitate. So general property taxes current year in 2023, I'm projecting $1,256,000. I'm actually levying this year for the first time $1,500 more than the amount that we're allowed to, which you remember by statute is required to be last year's levy amount plus CPI and growth only. The reason I'm doing that is because centrally assessed utilities do not get applied to values until end of August, which we are having our first reading by the first meeting in September. And historically, we've missed out on a small amount of revenue that we could get from that increase in property values. And I talked to Sue Ganji, the auditor, about how I could address that and if I could estimate it, and she and I together came up with that number of an extra $1,500. It's gonna not be 15 equals 1,500, that's a percent of value, but hopefully it will allow us to capture a little bit additional revenue. Because once we set our levy amount and send it to her, that's what we get. I would levy more if we had the potential to do so. That's why I put that extra $1,500 in there, but this is the maximum. And I don't budget for the full amount of levy because historic collection rates run 95 to 98% of what we levy, because not everybody pays their taxes on time.
Christie,
Yes.
JR just raised a question that my memory doesn't serve me well. Have we done Pledge of Allegiance?
No, we didn't, and I was wondering if we
And
wanted to do
roll
that.
call?
We don't have an agenda for this meeting, so I
Okay.
don't know if roll call's necessary, but I do kind of feel like we probably should have done the pledge, thank you.
Thank you. Let's do the pledge.
And we can do roll call if you want.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you like me to do a roll call? Okay, so I'll start with him. Dave Burris. J.R. Huddleston.
Here.
Larry Pratt.
Here.
Bill Lukens.
Here.
Melanie Wilson.
Here.
Linda Barbell.
Here.
Deborah Johnston.
Here.
Craig Romney.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, so back to my calculation. So the total levy will be $1,295,000. I'm projecting $1,256,000. Any questions about that calculation?
Total levy is what again?
$1,295,000. It's in the notes on the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I didn't. Okay, thank you.
So for those 3 to 5% that don't pay their taxes on time, we have a revenue code general property taxes all prior years. That's really more of a guess, because I don't know who's gonna pay, but 20,000 is a reasonable estimate. Year to date, we're at 11. I'd be willing to increase that by 1,000, but not much more if somebody wanted me to. But I project 20,000. General property tax on mobile homes, I have 50 due to collection being higher than anticipated. Year prior, we only estimated, or this year, 25, we've got 62, I think 50 is a reasonable estimate. And then same with delinquent taxes for mobile homes, subsequent year at $50. General sales and use tax is the next big revenue in the general fund. And I have estimated $1,330,000. Our general property taxes have been increasing. I use a consumption worksheet that estimates based on previous year collection what I should and could be able to project for growth. Growth is kind of a crapshoot. I don't anticipate any changes to sales tax, and if it stays the same, I think this is a very reasonable estimate. And just to point out, year to date, and we're a month behind, we've already collected $626,000. Any questions on that one? So those are the two biggest revenue sources in the general fund, and where we fund most of our general functions. Penalties, interest, and delinquent taxes, we've estimated 7. That's up from the 5,000 we estimated last year. Liquor and beer licenses, 17,500. Animal licenses, 1,500. I'd like to thank the Evans and the Brookside for ensuring that all of their renters have current licenses for their animals, because when they did that, we saw probably about 20 people come into City Hall and pay for licenses that hadn't had them before. So they're now requiring that. If you're a renter and somebody has an animal, you may want to require use the city license, because it is a requirement in the city that they be licensed. but enforcement's difficult. City licenses, 5,000, that's a variety of different licenses. Building permits, 20,000 we're estimating, that's up from last year, and down from the 2020 amount, which was significant. Stop me if you want me to answer anything. Other licenses, use permits and variance requests, 200, that is just one. We may get more, but you never know, we don't want to overestimate that. Better, yep,
Can I ask a question?
please do.
And I don't know if this is the time to ask it or later, but the liquor and beer licenses, the percentage,
Yeah, that's lower.
I know, but maybe we should think about raising that.
We did.
I know we only raised one little bit.
We raised it to 10% across the board. That's pretty
Yeah, it
high.
was 7 and 10.
It was 7.5 and 10. Beer and wine was 7.5 and liquor was 10. Now it's just 10 across the board.
Maybe we ought to think about raising that a little bit.
We could discuss that. Again, I wouldn't want to estimate revenue unless it's proven. And then I think from what I see on the listserv, 10 is one of the higher percentages. But you could make that decision.
You know, I'd pay that for 10 years.
Yeah, we have an operating agreement, everybody's got one, they're by year, so it wouldn't be effective until January 1, but we'll get down to those percentages, and I'm not sure you'd change that at a budget hearing, but it is something that you could
I
discuss.
just thought I'd ask, yeah.
Yep,
Thank
good
you.
question, thank you. We never budget for grants or donations, although we will supplementally appropriate a budget when we get them. So we jump way down. Bank franchise fees, we have 5,500 projected. Prorate license fees, 7,000. Liquor tax reversion, this is paid quarterly through the state, we have 25,000. Motor vehicle licenses, we have 38,000. Local government highway and bridge fund, we have 80,000. County road tax, 1,530. This year, when we do collect, you'll see that 0 year-to-date. We typically collect that in April, and that we didn't collect any in 2021. But this year, they're gonna pay us 2021 and 2022, but it is still only $1,530 a year. So we missed payment from the county in 2021. They're gonna double our payment this year when we get it, but the annual amount is still $1,530. 2,500 for Brookside Evans pilot. Pilot means payment in lieu of taxes. This is an absolute crapshoot, and I hate estimating it because they don't get their audits done in a timely manner. If you were on the council when we were a component unit, you'll remember that we used to have to put a note in every one of our audits that theirs wasn't done and we're supposed to be reporting it. And then we eliminated that component unit relationship. We're still entitled to the payments in lieu of taxes, but sometimes I get 2 or 3 years at once when all their audits get done because what they pay us is based on an amount that can only be determined after their audits are finalized. So you may look back in history and see, oh, we've got big amounts some years. I have no idea how to estimate it. I hope it comes in over every year, but I'm not comfortable estimating big amounts without knowing. And there's no requirement that they get it to us in a timely manner either, so. We do eventually get it. Library allotment from the county, I put 25 again. We did receive 25 in 2022. Sale of maps and publications, that's when people come into City Hall to make personal copies or need copies of things from us, so we estimated $50. Reimbursements, we estimate $2,500. Golden West patronages, we estimate $4,500, which is lower than last year, but they are now applying to bills in some circumstances. So we see that savings in our telephone expense. We're not getting the checks in all situations, but we are getting checks in some. So it's a little bit lower. I think it's a pretty good estimate. Special police services, that used to just be the LexisNexis background check things we do. We get $4 every time we respond to one. Now it also includes the revenue we receive from the school for the school resource officer. And if you remember that agreement that you approved has that amount increasing 5% each year during the term of the contract. So that reflects the increase. Other highways and streets, depending on the prices, all of the items that can be recycled that we take in during the free dump cleanups or even during our own city property cleanups, the street shop will take that to Ace Pacific Steel and Recycling. So some years you'll see big amounts because they piled it up for several years. But they look at that often and determine if it's appropriate, if they have enough and if the prices are good enough to take it in. Did I say that was 200? Park
Yes.
application fees, 750, oh no, park electricity, $750. Park application fee, 2,500. Is anyone following along real closely on the year-to-date stuff on the county reports?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Like, shout out if there's something that doesn't seem right, because I can only follow along in one place at a time. Rec program fees, we have 16,000. Rec program late fees, that was added in 2019, we have $50. We could probably estimate a little bit more, as Kathy does a phenomenal job making sure she collects those late fees if people don't get registered on time, but you can't guarantee somebody's gonna be late, so we look at that kind of like donations. Airport vending commission, they get 15% of Coke sales checked quarterly, we have $25 in there. Airport concession, he added oil and windshield washer fluid a couple years ago, we have 400 estimated there. Airport fuel sales, 65,000 is the estimate for revenue. I think that's a little high. We had a very detailed discussion today about the way we report and account for both airport fuel sale revenue and expense. It's an asset as inventory until we sell it. And then when we sell it, we recognize only the revenue that's in excess of the cost of goods sold minus the merchant processing fees. So it's not a dollar for dollar expense revenue. So I think if you look year to date, we're at about 25, I think,
26.
26. That's not that far behind. We report that in every Friday when we get the reports from MSA. So I think 50 is a more reasonable estimate. Just because fuel prices have gone up doesn't mean we're necessarily going to get more revenue, because we try to keep our pricing in that at least over $1 what we pay for it. So I have that highlighted, but I don't want it to go up, I want it to go down. And maybe because of last year's, we're comfortable keeping it at 65. I just want feedback from the council on what they, maybe we split it in the middle, put 55, I don't know.
Well, we're struggling to, well, and we can stop struggling to maintain the $1 a gallon
Increase.
price over cost. I don't want to call it profit because I'm not sure it is, so. And then the concern, of course, is if we,
Like too high.
you know, we just pay $6.04 a gallon, we're charging $6.35, but not the whole batch costs that much. That if we go up to $7.04, that does not make us the preferred fuel stop. So we're still charging more than we made it there. I guess that's a lot of blabbering to say, you might be right, I'm not sure 65,000 is doable.
Are you more comfortable with, I was initially most comfortable with 50. I would go up a little bit if there's an argument to do so, but
I'd rather 100 promise.
everybody agree with 50? Anybody want 55?
I think 50 is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cemetery sale of lots, we have estimated at 2,000, that goes up and down. We still have plenty of lots for sale, it's a beautiful cemetery at a very reasonable price. If you haven't bought yours yet, you might want to do it. If you want to go there.
What are you implying?
She looked at me first.
It's just such a beautiful spot, we have such reasonable costs if you look at us compared to other cemeteries.
I have a family plot, so
Oh, good.
I'm in.
Good, you've already paid your dues, and you get it forever, it's yours forever.
You know, there's a spot waiting for me.
Library fines, we have estimated at $2,500. If you look back at other years, I just want to remind everybody that we waived fines for a large part of 2020 due to COVID. And year-to-date, we're at $1,486. There may be a $500 we could increase that, or maybe even $1,000 if you're comfortable, but I estimated at $2,500. Does anybody want to add any to that? I think 2,500 is a reasonable estimate. I think you might possibly hit 3,000 if everything stays the same with fines next year as it did this year, but leave it. I'm moving on. Let me build that. Interest earned, $250. We're gonna see those numbers dwindling as we spend all our money. Mueller Center building rent. This is a time that Jeff may want to chime in if he wants to increase this, but year-to-date, we're at 13,700. I have 18,000 as an estimate.
So on the expense side, I'm not going there now, we have proposed a $4,000 expense for a children's theater workshop that we want to do at the Mueller next year. The revenue from that, it is a revenue producer, generally speaking. We want to increase at least enough to cover that expense of $4,000, but the projections right now would be about $6,000. So I have proposed that we add in $6,000 here to reflect that revenue. And I'm also okay with not doing so. Missy has, and I agree and disagree on some levels, but I also understand the problem with putting in revenue that is unproven. So if council would prefer not to reflect that revenue at this point, that's fine. At some point, if we need to add it back in, we can, just as a side note. So it's up to you guys.
Something I maybe want to add to and clarify, the revenue won't come from them paying us building rent, it'll come from ticket sales.
Right, exactly.
Which are proven. And then I was wondering if this is a recreation activity or if this is a Mueller Center activity, because we have never set a fee for ticket sales for an event at the Mueller Center because it's a rental facility and other people collect those fees. So they rent it from us, pay us building rent, and then they collect that fee. So to get to where we know we have a good idea is a long way. This isn't really, the $4,000 isn't necessarily really building rent,
No,
it's a
it's not.
ticket fee, and then we'd have to add a fee for the amount that we want to charge for that in our fee schedule. And then we have to see how many people attend and are willing to pay it, so leave it or
Well, this
add.
time it'd be a crapshoot.
And that's Missy's point, so.
Yeah.
Is there like a surcharge, like I thought there was, or?
No, we would actually be charging
It's
for
a
the
workshop.
ticket.
Oh,
for
there you
kids.
go, okay, gotcha.
Pay 20,
Which
30 bucks.
kind
to
of
go.
sounds like recreation.
It actually, it can go either way. It can go
But they're
either
using
here
our
or
facility,
recreation.
so.
So I'm okay either way. I had it originally in recreation, I moved over here, I can go back and forth, it doesn't make a difference.
I think the important thing is that we budget for it this year to give it a try as an expense, but when it comes to revenue, I prefer we wait and have it be proven. But I'm not against increasing this a little bit based on where we're at year-to-date. It's just that we haven't hit large projections in years past.
How far out are you looking? How many months out? Next summer or what?
For that program, or?
Next
It's a
year.
spring,
Next year.
spring break program.
2023.
23.
So you'll see it when we get to expenses, but for revenue.
I just wanted to bring it up now because I don't want to look at a new expense on the other side and then question how we're going to cover it, so.
I think Chris does have one more routine renter on Sundays for the conference room, so
19 or 20.
I was gonna say, are we comfortable with bumping that to 20?
I would be, I'm okay with that.
I think so.
Okay. Oop, I just turned 22. Anybody have any objections to that? Okay. Airport hangar rentals is another one we've discussed. You see it is increased. We haven't increased our rental rates yet, but we did add the commercial renter. If he stays all year next year, it's an additional $5,800 in revenue. We have 35 estimated, and year-to-date, we are at 20.
And we're not calculating the new hangar because again, it's an uncertainty, we don't know.
We haven't even broke ground.
Yeah.
And hopefully, that gets done before next year, and we get to start renting out And then if the airport needs something, we can do a supplemental appropriation, and our offset for the added expense is the increased revenue that we have collected, because we have a new hangar and we're collecting more hangar rents. But at this point, I'm a little concerned that that project's not gonna finish, and I don't wanna project revenue for something. I have no concerns about at least some spots getting filled up.
Is there any idea when they're gonna start that?
They're supposed to be done September 1st.
The building has been ordered.
Some change orders
We
have
know
been
how things
discussed.
go with ordering.
Yeah, there'll be a
those.
change order for the foundation, which should decrease the cost because it's more labor but less concrete. You know, we're still getting a lot of promises.
35 is an increase over what we projected last year. Like I said, we're at 20,000 year-to-date, 30 days behind in collection. So if you wanted to raise it to 40, I'd be comfortable with that, but I'm not comfortable raising it significant amounts for projected revenue that we haven't.
I would recommend, my recommendation raised to 40 to include the commercial contract that we have with our tenants.
But he's in there now, and has he been in there all this year?
3 months.
3 months?
And-
And 5,000 a month?
No, that's in total for the year. It's like 490 or something. And there is, in our agreement, there's no requirement for him to stay. So, although we hope that he stays and it grows, and I think the future plan, if everything goes good, is to get his own location at our airport and grow his business, and that would be great. But at any time, he could also say, this isn't working out for me, I'm not.
They don't sign a lease to go.
I think we ought to stay at 35 until we see that other end though. That's my opinion. You know, it's just like what we said before, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, it is. What if we shoot in the middle, 38?
I mean, we can do that on all this stuff, but
If KLJ was getting more positive reports, we're getting a lot of verbal promises, but KLJ's been a bit frustrated, so I'm hopeful, but I'm also reluctant. As you said, you can't budget on hope, so I tend to agree with Craig.
35?
I'm assuming if a big truckload of money dumps in the middle of the airport, we can always supplementally appropriate, right?
Absolutely.
there ain't no way they're gonna have that hangar done by September 1st.
No, there's not, but just remember, by doing that with 35, we're not accounting for the 5,800 from the contract, which I'm fine with if you don't want to do that. I just, so you know, we're not accounting for that additional rental.
Yeah. How's his business doing out there, do you know?
It's doing well. So, okay, that's maybe, if we're not accounting,
Well, we didn't, so what we're doing is using estimates from previous year's collections and any increases but modest. So like I mentioned earlier, we've collected for 3 months, and it's not guaranteed, but I'd be comfortable adding 5 more if you told me to. But I thought 35 was a good estimate, hoping we'd exceed it.
See, and I look at any business can go under in a month.
Any person could sell their airplane and
Yep.
pull out too, and we could have.
So, I don't know. Even if we stay at 35, we make more than that, it's just a bonus.
40's not bad either. We are at 20 year-to-date for collection. Larry, I forgot my crystal ball.
it just,
There's 5 months left in this year.
Well, but we collect rents and arrears, so.
it may make some of our future discussions easier if we take advantage of the fact that we do have a paying customer.
And I think it's still modest,
Yeah.
the increase
We got a
projection.
lot of paying customers that's renting hangars out there.
Well, no, but with
I know what you mean.
with the business and with the business also having some sales tax revenue, so we may
Split
not.
the difference.
Yeah, 38, 38,
37.5?
going once?
No, to the question of when will the hangar be done, Rick sent Jeff and I an email yesterday. Hangars will not be completed by September 1st, but hope construction to begin in early August. Expecting the hangars to be completed by end of September.
They said it goes up real fast once they get going. 38?
Metal hangar. I go with 38.
Okay, yeah.
the other side of the fence, we're gonna wish we'd added these dollars in. Is the reason why.
We can always go back if we decide we want to. Airport lease and hay revenue, we have 8,500 estimated.
What did we just get off of that?
That, I don't, 4,000 something. I want to say 4,300. It was very similar in price and production to last year.
So are they gonna?
We haven't collected it yet.
They gonna be able to get another cut off of it this year?
No, I don't think so. And if you remember, it jumped because we added that, those 5-year agreements
Yeah.
with the big Pasture A, Pasture B, whatever.
Feedlot and stuff.
Airport courtesy car, 1,000. So we had really slow revenue collection at the beginning of the year, and then just recently we got more comfortable and bought into the process, and so that might be kind of a small estimate. We did also get the donation of another courtesy car, so year-to-date we collected 1,900. I'm comfortable increasing that by another 1,000 if everyone here is.
With another car.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
we're getting, on ForeFlight and AirNav, we're getting a lot of really positive comments, and that goes out to the aviation community, so, and a lot of them have to do with the courtesy car and the ability to rent the car, so.
And Rick's collecting it when applicable, because you can use the first 2 hours without paying if you buy avgas, pretty consistently. So I'm comfortable raising that to 2,000 or maybe even 2,500.
I think so. That would go up.
25? It's 1,900 year to date.
Yeah, I think 25, if it's
Yeah.
19 years
That's a
today.
good guess.
He wanted to add in a new used rental in the car, but I said, let's hold off on that. Let's not do
Well,
it.
we'll
Let's not
just
do the
give him one of
budget.
her surplus ones.
That's what I said. Take my yellow truck. You can do that.
I'd love to rent that thing.
All right, so now we're into some library revenue. Again, we don't ever budget for donations.
Just we bumped it up to 25, you said?
I bumped it up to 25. Are you good with that, Larry?
Oh, yeah, that's why I
Okay.
want to make sure I heard that
Yep.
correctly.
I'll send out updated worksheets when we're all done too. Interlibrary loan items, if you'll remember, we increased that twice this year due to shipping increases, so that's 300. Library damaged or lost, 150. Library copies, 5,000. Library cards, 4,000, and that price doubled in 2020. And if you live in the city, you don't pay, only county residents pay. DARE program donations, we put in 2,500, but that has its own restricted equity account, and it's fully funded by donations, so they can't spend more than they've gotten in. So we put this revenue here, you'll see an offsetting expense in the police department fund. Currently, there's over $4,000 in that restricted equity account, so even if they don't get the donations, they have enough money to fund the program again this year. Due to generous donors in the past. Okay, so here we're getting into those liquor operating percentages, revenues. So this is on the wholesale purchases made by anyone who has a malt beverage, wine, liquor license in Hot Springs. So Mary contacts all the wholesalers, and those wholesalers provide her faxed invoices of all the purchases each one of our license holder makes with each of them. And then she creates an invoice adding 10% as our operating percentage, and then they pay that. It's done in arrears. For some of these businesses, we've reused these numbers, so if you look back historically on some of these, you might see some variances. And we tried to add notes for the ones that I remember and know used to be something else. So I'm gonna go through these. If we decide to increase the percentage, it wouldn't be effective till next year anyway, and then we'd have to determine amount, and then I can add that percent to this increase in revenue pretty easily if we decide to do that. But I do think 10, we just increased it, was it last year or the year before? From 7.5. So they did just get an increase, but this is good revenue for the city, so. The American Legion, I've estimated at 7,500. I have nothing for Bourbon County. Yep.
How come Legion's down 21, we estimated 95, they're only 49? drop in 2000?
95 is what we collected, not what we estimated. 75 is the same as we estimated.
Oh,
So if you want to increase that, I mean, we're at 49, and it is 30 days in arrears, so if you wanted to increase the estimate by 1,000 or 2,000, I would most likely be comfortable with that.
How much will road construction hamper them for '23?
Larry, I forgot my crystal ball.
Because it's gonna be moving down that direction,
The
so. they're gonna-
pandemic was phenomenal for liquor sales, so I don't know how, maybe more people will stop because they're frustrated. I don't know.
Actually, for the Legion, where they have better access than
Yeah.
Everybody
else.
else.
Yeah, Garden Street, it may, for that particular establishment.
May help them?
It may, yeah, it may help them, or at least not hurt them.
And if-
Well, they were closed off because of the bridge for a while this last year too.
Where you still had gardens.
But they had Garden Street, so they did okay.
They want to get there, they got there.
So
I
I'm
did okay
comfortable
with
with
that.
$1,000 or $2,000 increase to that projection if you'd like.
Mayor's got something to
I
say.
just, to Bob's question, if they get back on the schedule, all the work will be done from James Bridge south, and it'll be the police station north that the work will be on, so access to American Legion should be.
So their access will not be hampered going
No.
into '23,
No,
knock
I
on
mean-
wood.
Remember I said, if they get back on schedule?
Yeah.
Either Garden Street or Jennings or River Street, hopefully will provide them access.
Be okay upping it to
85 or 95?
95?
I don't know if I'd go 95.
How about 9? How about 9? What'd you say, Larry?
That's traditions running around that, I
Sold that.
Sold 9,000, nothing for Bourbon County, nothing for Woolies. Boy, I hope something gets in that building. If they can do anything about that. Frankie's Place, the word on the street was they were downsizing and then maybe gonna sell, but they're still here, so we have 500 in there. Winter Circle, 6,500. That's at 4,500 year-to-date, and we collected 9,000 the previous year. Again, I'd be comfortable with $1,000 or a couple $1,000 increase to that estimate. What has happened is the prices of things have gone up, so we're charging 10% on wholesale. They're paying more, maybe using the same, we're getting a greater percentage, so.
That place is always busy
Yeah.
because we don't hardly have any places for food.
How about 9? 85?
I'd go 9 on that.
Yeah.
They're consistent too.
Yeah.
Sold at 9. Yes Way, 25. They're at 11 year-to-date. I think 25 is good.
Yeah, I think that.
Springs Restaurant, 100. Misty River Tavern, which we had great expectations for, which was the Burdette House at 2,500, but I'm more comfortable with a lower number. For what's going on, 500. Change it to 500. Red Rock River Resort, on the other hand, I don't have anything they were gonna sell. Now somebody else is helping them operate and talks about having a restaurant and using that. I don't know, I have it at 0. I put 100 or 150 in if you wanted, but I don't.
I think we ought to leave it until we know what's going
I'll
on.
leave it.
Excuse me, Misty, did you drop Misty River Tavern to 500?
I did.
I hope so, because that's why I wrote down.
But they've done 2,100 so far this year?
Misty River.
Yep,
They were rocking and rolling and then they weren't.
yep.
They're really, business has slowed down.
They bought a whole lot, and then there was a big to-do about where that liquor went when it didn't all get sold, because you can't apparently purchase liquor from a wholesaler saying you're gonna sell it and then take it somewhere else, out of the state, because
Okay.
some did your liquor
Yeah,
license.
there's-
So they did buy a whole lot, because they planned to go, and
I heard there was a big
there was something.
hoorah there
Yep,
in the whole organization.
yeah,
So
still
I
getting worked
wouldn't-
out.
I wouldn't put anything right now until they get their stuff cleared up.
Nothing, we put 500. A little something,
No, that's
I
all.
think that'll be
okay with
okay.
that. They do have a license, so
But
they are functioning and open.
Yeah. Okay, Morning Sunshine at 50. Big Bats, 12,000. They're at 7,400 year to date. If you wanted me to increase that by 1,000 or 1,500 or a couple thousand, I would entertain that conversation.
I'd say 14.
14. I'm comfortable with that. Anybody have any objections
We
to
got a
that?
lot of foot traffic down there.
Sure do.
Especially with the workers.
That too.
Well, hopefully they're waiting till
The
after.
work workers.
Dakota Mart, I
So
have
what do we do in Big Bats?
14.
14,000.
Yep, that's okay. Dakota Mart, I have it 3,000, I'm comfortable with that. If I raised it, it'd only be by a couple hundred. I'll leave it, I don't hear any objection. Lynn's, oh, that was Dakota Mart Gas, I should clarify. They have a seller license from Lynn's Dakota Mart. I have 45, they're at 20, I'm pretty comfortable with that. We have historically collected more. Again, 2020 started a great increase, but looking year to date, I wouldn't want to raise it too much higher. I'd maybe go 48 if you want, but leave it at 45. Okay. I mean, it's a lot, it's a big revenue producer for sure. Southern Hills Mercantile, it was Mike's Place, and then Earth Goods, now this is what it is. It's a super cool place, and they'll probably exceed, but I have 100 in there right now. They won't, the things that they make, they don't have to buy from a wholesaler, so we don't add our 10% to. So if you wanted me to increase that by 100 or so, I might, but until it's proven, I put 100. Corner Pantry, I have 4,000. Year to date, they're already at 3,400. Corner Pantry is a gas station. It's, which one is it? What is
It's
it?
over by the Evans.
Yeah, what do we call it? We have a different name for it than Corner
Battle
Pantry.
Mountain.
Battle Mountain is what we call it. So if you wanted to increase that one, even by a couple thousand, I wouldn't totally be against it. The most we had collected in the last couple years was 5,700, so you might not want to do a couple thousand, but
1,500.
add 1,500, so to 5,500. Again, year to date, we're at 34, which is good, so 55, I'm comfortable with that. Anybody have any objections?
Sounds good.
Stay USA, I have nothing. Pizza Hut, I have $25. Sunny Superfoods is another one that did great during those pandemic years. I have 45,000 estimated. We're at 23 year to date. We've been up to 59 in 2020. You know, I might go up 5,000, I might split that 5,000. You let me know what you think, or we might leave it at 45.
I think its business has dropped with the road construction.
Yeah, I don't think Sonny's
Just
doing as good as
harder
other
to get in
grocery
and get
stores.
out of there.
I'd leave it at that.
Okay, I'll leave it at 45. HSP Lock Properties, that's the 309 right next to City Hall. We have 2,000. If you remember, you approved a restaurant liquor license for them, and they've been able to increase their sales of spirits. So year to date, they're at 1,900. If you wanted me to increase that by 1,000 or so, I'd be happy to.
We might want to.
Okay.
Vibrate.
3,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big Time Pizza, $250. Dollar General, 6,000. Family Dollar Store number 27126. 3,000. They're at 2,000 year to date. Maybe 500. That could go up, or maybe it could stay the same.
Was it Family Dollar Store that put all those new coolers and stuff in?
No, that was Dollar General, that was Dollar General.
You know, up on the hill?
And they're selling produce now.
Yeah, that,
Oh, I haven't been up
yeah,
there.
they've changed a lot of stuff, so they might start doing better.
All
But
right.
6,000, I guess, okay.
Yeah. Well, they're about halfway right now, so that
Yeah.
one's a good one.
Is
Okay,
it
so
combined then for both Dollar Generals, or is that?
No, that's Family Dollar.
Oh, Family Dollar, okay.
So what are you putting for them then?
I'm leaving it at 3. Unless anybody wants me to get into Buffalo Dreamer, 500. They're 435 year to date, so maybe 750, or maybe leave it 500.
Buffalo Dreamer.
Cape Cod,
Mountain Springs.
They seem, I think pretty busy all the time, I mean, so, yeah.
I think
probably,
that's gonna
yeah,
pick up, so.
And they're at $435 year to date, so $750.
yeah.
It's a whole lot more money, but it's a little something. Cable TV franchise fee, that's paid quarterly, $18,000. Recovery of prior year expenditures, that is primarily our workers' comp audit refund. Does anybody need me to explain that process? I've done it so many times, why we get that and why I feel comfortable budgeting it. We're keeping it. Operating transfers in, I have that the same as last year, $260,000. What we budget for is $125 from water, $125 from wastewater, and $10,000 from solid waste. What we end up receiving includes the water and sewer usage and forgiveness that we have to account for to follow the generally accepted accounting principles. So as you look back and you see those amounts are greater than the amounts that we budget for in some years, that's because of those operating transfers in when when we bill for the usage of water and sewer in the general fund, and then they provide forgiveness equal to the amount that we charge it. We don't budget for either because the net effect is zero. And if a discussion we'll have as we get to the water fund and the sewer fund is the unplanned projects, expenses related to the project that we're already doing. And so skipping a year of the transfers in, we take money out of the general fund, but would be something that we'll have to discuss. So we could do that now or we could leave it in, but the operating transfers in are because the water and the sewer fund and solid waste fund are not getting billed for any of the billing services, the accounting services, they're not getting billed for being in City Hall, and so it's essentially like a payment in lieu of
Doesn't Barb get some of her pay from the water department?
She's 100% out of the water department. So leave it. All right. So in the general fund, the new revenue projection, and that's at the bottom of page 3, is going to be $3,497,405. We did that. Not that I want to talk about expenses, but I'm going to go into the expenses and update my projected revenue now while I'm thinking about it.
497.
So I thought we put things up more.
But we decreased 1, 2.
First page.
We decreased 15,000 airport fuel sales.
There was no change, 405.
So the
So we
account-
lost 2,000.
But you made up for, you lost 15, then you made up for some of it. All right, so the next fund that we'll review in revenue is the the 211 liquor lodging dining sales tax fund. Anybody not know what this fund is and why we have it? Are y'all good with that? So revenue for this fund is easy to project. I use the same consumption worksheet that I used to project general sales and use tax, and $185,000 is the amount that we're projecting for revenue. And we split that revenue, because it stays within that fund, 80% with the chamber, 20%, as I mentioned in the notes, was dictated in the ordinance that established the fund to help cover the costs associated with utilities and building repairs at the Mueller Civic Center and the depot. That one was easy, 185. Additional sales tax fund revenue projections, that's our 212 fund. This fund is 1/3 of the 2% municipal sales and use tax that the city collects. And ordinance 1008 established and dictates what the fund is used for. We're projecting $670,000 for revenue. We don't budget anything for grants, even though this is a fund that we use heavily for airport improvements, larger airport improvements that can't be funded through the general fund. Interest earned, I have 1,000 projected. Again, we're spending a lot of money, so lower than previous years. We do have 2 special assessments that are being paid back to the city, and this fund receives it. This fund incurred the expenses. This fund receives the revenue. This is the Back 9 and Boulder Falls street assessments. Anyone at any time can come in and pay their assessment in full. So this is a little bit of a crapshoot too, but we know what we've certified to the county to be paid. So it's a fairly good estimate, but it can vary. There is a 3rd line of revenue, so there's the principal collected by the county, any interest and penalty collected by the county, and then there's a 3rd revenue related to these same 2 assessments called principal collected by municipality. We can collect revenue in there, but the assessments were established to be paid through the county, but they can come pay us in full at any time. So anything I get in that line, I'm gonna be taking away from what I'm estimating in the above line. So I only have estimates for the principal collected by the county and the interest and penalty collected by the county. 108,515 for principal, 17,866 for interest, for a total of 797,381 in the 212 fund. The 213 fund is our bid fund, Business Improvement District. So collection is based on the honor system. We have added some new members to our board. They're very interested in pursuing collection of the tax and remittance, and then also in possibly auditing some of the businesses, because we know that lodging sales tax revenue has increased, so it makes sense that the bid collection would go up. And in 2021, we did have better than estimated collection, but year to date this year we're pretty slow. But again, this is a little more than 30 days in arrears, because the whole 30 days has to pass. Then they have 20 days in which to make the payment for the previous month. So it is a little behind. I think 100,000 is a little high. We're not saving anything in the general fund if I lower this, or we're not making any more, having it higher. This fund has its own separate set of expenses. It does have cash reserves, so if it doesn't make as much as it projects, it can cover an expenditure in this budget. If I lowered it, we'd just lower the expenses for next year, but it wouldn't affect the other shortage. Yes?
Does this include, or maybe it's just something not relevant, the Airbnb that are popping up?
It's supposed to. Our ordinance is written to include all lodging establishments within the city.
Okay, what about the ones that are home?
We have been searching the sites that post those and sending out letters to those businesses that have them, and asking them to, and reminding them, asking them to report monthly even if they don't have anybody that stays, to just say 0 for April. And that is something that we changed, that we're sending those letters out, making sure they're aware of it, and trying to collect that $2 tax.
Airbnb has some new things that I have to dig into a little bit, based on some lawsuits, that Airbnb as a company now has to report certain information. So I'm trying to put these 2 pieces together. I haven't had a lot of time to work on it.
The Municipal League has a really great article and some of the statutory changes that they're recommending at the state level to address some of those types of businesses for licensing and for sales tax collection and this type of tax
The
collection. So
reason
that
why
was
I'm
this
asking is
month's.
because I've got one catty corner from my house over here, 2 or 3 in the morning, not cutting, you know. Yeah, just curious, thank you.
So I have 100,000 highlighted because I'm not sure if they're gonna hit it or not,
I
but.
got 30,000 a day.
Yep, but it's about 45 days behind, and this is the busy season. And again, they have their own expenses too, so if we lower it, we'll just lower their expenses, but they do have cash reserves adequate enough to cover this type of budget if they collect around 80,000. I think their cash balance is in the $45,000 or $50,000. So that's like their savings or cash in the bank. So I have it highlighted. This is what I was comfortable putting in, but I'm not real sure because I can't figure out how to get that magic ball to work quite right. But I would change it if you wanted.
Every time.
It's a little cloudy, I know.
100, I'm gonna leave it. Is
Okay.
everybody okay with that?
Yep.
We'll see.
Yeah. You'll do that. You know that estimating. We don't get any money really in this 501 capital improvement fund besides some interest earned right now, so I put 500 in there. But we're spending quite a bit. Water Fund 602, I have 2,000 projected for return check late fees. Those are billed automatically. We've historically collected more than we project, but year-to-date, we're at 1,000. That's about 30 days behind too. I'm comfortable with 2,000, even though sometimes we collect a little bit more. You never know if somebody's gonna be late or not. We don't have any plans to not charge that fee or change anything about it at this time. Penalty, 10,000. So our penalty amount changed from a percent to a flat amount in 2019, and then we also waived that for a period of time in 2020 due to COVID. So 10,000 is my projection. Interest earned, 1,000. CD interest, 50. Honestly, I should probably lower that interest earned in the water fund since our balances are dropping so significantly. I should probably drop that to 500. Does anybody have any objection to that? I think they have a little bit of a overage. They have a little more revenue than expenses, and they need that. They need to start putting more cash back in the bank.
Dropping that to 500.
I am, if everybody's okay with that. CD interest at 50, remember, we have that debt service reserve money that's gonna always be there until the debt's paid off, and I think they still have 12 or 15 years. We do have some special assessment revenue that we collect in the water fund. That includes the 26th Street Water District Improvement and the Martin Street Water Improvement assessments. Same schmeal with the 3 different revenue codes and only budgeting the top 2. Recovery of prior year expenditures is the workers' comp payroll audits we do every year. Pretty comfortable with that estimate. Depends on how much money they receive for pay that's not actually hours worked. That's where those refunds come from. Metered and flat rate water, we have 900,000 estimated. We're 359 year-to-date, and this is about 30 days behind. 4,000 estimated for bulk water sales, 35,000 for the water fill station. Reconnect call-out fees, we have 1,200, and then our quarterly fire sprinkler system payments, we have 1,600. I'd like to explain a little bit why we receive revenue but don't budget for anything with Fall River water users. In our agreement, even our new agreement, there's no obligation for them to buy any water from us. It's based on need. It varies. I don't know how to estimate it. If you wanted me to put an amount in there, I would, but Tracy's comfortable with me leaving it blank because there's no guarantee of the amount. So we have water, we've changed something. We have $982,649 for estimated revenue in the water fund.
Say that again.
982,649. Wastewater. Golden West Capital Credits, 300, interest earned 500, $50 for CD interest. This also has Martin Street Sewer Assessment paybacks, workers' comp payroll audit refund 400, and the recovery of prior year expenditures. Large revenue is our sewer charges. We have $840,000 estimated. 1,500 for sewer user fees. We have a commercial company that dumps at our wastewater plant, and we bill them for that. Other sewer revenue, we collect money from the RV dump station. It's hard to estimate what that'll be, because it's based on donations only. But 500 estimated, and I think we're at 400 year to date, so I feel like that's a good estimate.
This is 1,500, you said another, is that the VA?
No, it's, is it called Black Hills Septic?
Doesn't the VA dump in there too?
No, but we put that in sewer user fees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is for people that come and dump directly into our plant. So $856,782, and it's a little past 6, so is this a good time to take a break, or do you want to get through revenue before we break?
Why was there such a decrease from 21 to year-to-date on the user fee? Going from 6,400 down to 17?
That wasn't an estimate, and I would have to look. If you mean the amount we collected in 2021, that was 6,400?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it pulled up in case somebody asks me a question like that. I'll just look and see what kind of anomaly happened in 2021 that I'm not remembering. So,
That is what was received in 2021, isn't it?
yeah, it's not what we budgeted, it's what we received. So I'm gonna look, I should be able to pull up and tell you what jumped that up that year.
God, how soft these chairs.
You talked about bringing pillows like
I
last year,
did
didn't we?
too.
For $5, I'll give you mine. I'll rent you mine.
Bill's charging out too. Bill's renting.
He's probably got a car full, that's why he's renting them.
I asked for extended history, so it just takes a little while to pull up.
Well, you have about another half hour with the rest of this.
We have the golf, we have solid waste, which is super simple, and then we have the golf course and Owens Lunch.
That's it.
Before we break it. Anybody?
It's my
object?
suggestion.
Okay, I know I'm not, so I'm connected through a VPN, it's gonna take a while for that
That's
to
fine,
pull up.
that's
Is it
fine,
okay if I move forward and then
Sure.
I'll jump back to this to answer that?
Yeah,
And
that's
hopefully
fine.
it'll be pulled up by then. All right, 612, we don't change this so far, is our solid waste fund. We are in a contract with a provider, and 100% of the revenue collected here goes to that service provider. And if you remember, we typically appropriate a little bit more at the end of the year because we've collected more if we need to. But we have an estimate of $215,000. This provider has written in an annual increase into the contract. So we are expecting an increase in the costs, so increase in revenue, but that will equal the exact same increase in expense. So, and then the city fee in 2022, we raised that 15 cents, no, more than that. It was $2.25, we raised it to $2.65. So we're estimating $35,000 there. So we have $250,200 estimated for solid waste. Golf course, here we're gonna get Jeff and.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Don't want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Let's go with it.
Yeah, go with it.
Okay, so, first one is Golden West Capital Credits. Then we have green fees. We are estimating $160,000. We are at $88,000 year to date. We have a couple, maybe a few good months left of golf coursing. I didn't highlight it. I had a little lower, Jeff had a little higher. I think we met in the middle on that before we presented it. If anybody wants to see that change, let me know. Season passes, we have 90,000. Punch cards, we have 5,000. Cart trail fees, we have 8,000. I am not quite sure I understand why this increased so much in 2022 over years past. I think it has to do with the person collecting it.
It has to do with people not stealing cars, that's.
Well, the cart trail fee is for people that own their own
No,
cars.
I know,
And
but
so
they're
we
going
used
out.
to, I think,
They
not
weren't
to
they
charge
weren't
it.
enforcing it, they were not enforcing those so I think now they've got a handle on it.
So year-to-date, it's looking good. I was okay with 8,000. If whatever we changed, we keep doing going forward. Cart storage, 22,000. Tournaments, 7,500. Advertising fees. We tried we tried some stone tea advertisement things back in 2016 and collected some, and then we didn't follow up with it or keep doing it. So I've never budgeted for it because we haven't collected anything historically. That's why I haven't highlighted. But there is an agreement already in place, apparently,
There it is.
for ongoing driving range ball sponsorship. And I'll let Jeff talk more on that.
PJ has gotten a $3,000 a year commitment from $1,000 from four different vendors. And there's consistent commercial sponsorship with their logos on range balls, which is imperative because we have to, if you play golf, you know, the range balls we got out there are garbage. So this allows us to put money back into it to purchase their, what's the word, refurbished balls. But anyway, this is an income stream that he's not had before, but he does now have those agreements in place.
So whether or not you're
In
comfortable
writing?
Yes.
adding it in or not, you let me know. Anybody object to leaving it in there? Okay. Well, unhighlighted then.
I do know they're advertising on TV for the golf course. Marvelous.
Yeah. We've done some really good stuff on it, yeah. And the new publicity, the new static publicity, the brochures and stuff are out now, so.
1,000 for Admiral Beverage, Pepsi, that's donation reimbursements. Again, we don't typically budget for donations, but this is an ongoing agreement and they paid it in the past. Room for rents, we're estimating $100. Beer, 50,000. Food, 37,000.
That's a weekend.
Clothing, 15,000. Equipment, 9,000. Oh, I want to explain these two that we added, and I don't have anything budgeted for. PJ requested I create revenue and expense codes for special order clothing for resale and special order equipment for resale. And this would be if a golfer is requesting something that he doesn't necessarily want to keep in his pro shop for resale, but he's willing to order for them and mark up to sell to them if they want it. And so we're not estimating anything, but hopefully, because we haven't done a lot of this to know what we can expect, but hopefully we'll be able to generate some additional revenue with him allowing for that type. And he always collects the revenue before the order. So, equipment, we have 9,000. Rentals, range balls, 9,500. I have that highlighted because I estimated a lower number. Year to date, we're at 7,300.
And we still got months to go, so I think 95 is even low, but that was what we changed to 95.
Everybody comfortable with that? Cart rental, we have 110,000. We're at 51 year to date. I think that's a little high. I think 100 is even high, but I think we could possibly hit it.
If there is an expense side too to this, and we need to add some carts, because right now we're running out of carts on busy days. So there's an expense piece to this too, that if we get the expense taken care of and can afford to do that, then we'll have the additional cart rental. So I think 110 is a realistic number from my side. Again, I wouldn't argue with under promising, so.
And the 51's still, like you said, a month behind.
That's a month behind.
No, not in the golf course. We're receiving revenue every day.
Oh, you
They bring their
okay.
revenue in every day.
And there's only, let's see,
Maybe a few, three,
maybe 3 months left.
I would say we go down to 100.
I say we go down
90.
90.
They did 112 last year.
And it was a great year for golf because of COVID. And, you know, I'm comfortable with 100 too, or 90, whatever. 100.
I'll put a million up for.
Yeah, if you had an extra
I
zero,
had an
makes a
extra
big
zero,
difference. 95, did I hear you say, JR?
I thought, I'm saying 90.
So am I. I think we're going 90. Was there, Bill?
Anything that we take off their revenue, we support from the 212 if we don't cut. But I'm comfortable with what you're comfortable with.
It's whatever the council recommends, or wants to do, but I agree with what Missy just said. We don't want to put more money out of the fund than we have to. And if we can support funding these additional carts, we'll have the income off these carts. So I'm comfortable with what we budgeted, but I
You're
understand.
comfortable with 100,000?
I am, yeah, absolutely. That's 10,000, less than what I thought.
If you're comfortable with it, I've got a.
Thank you, I appreciate the trust. I'm serious about it. No, I'm serious.
Mini max handicap 400,
We're dropping that to 100?
yeah. Mini max handicap 400, miscellaneous I should be leaving these highlighted so I know what we've changed. I can go back and change our accounting software without searching. Sorry. Miscellaneous revenue 400. That comes from our monthly sales tax reporting allowance. I think I've explained that to you because we, in a timely manner, report and remit our sales taxes. They give us a percentage back for doing that. Workers' comp refunds 300, and then our operating transfers in is highlighted because that will change based on what we decide of expenses, because if you remember, we provide assistance from the additional sales tax fund. The part that is budgeted is the amount that we have in approved expenses exceeding approved revenues. The part that is unbudgeted is the water and sewer transfer in. So before we made a $10,000 change in the decrease of the revenue, the assistance was $113,180 that was needed, and so that'll update, and I'm not gonna worry about updating that until we get through the expenses.
What do you think about 157,000? I think that's a little high.
I'd prefer it to be zero, but, you know.
I prefer to sell a golf course, but hey.
Yep, and I wouldn't let you budget for something that wasn't done yet, so, because we're gonna budget for the world we live in today, so.
Excuse me.
So that number will change, I'll leave it highlighted. Evans Plunge, ready to move on? I'm not gonna give you a total in the golf course fund, because we're gonna make changes to that one as we go through the
We took 10,000 out. All right, I think we're up.
We lowered another one too, didn't we? Or
About
raised
one.
it?
For golf course?
Yeah, just that one?
We can lower that operating grant.
Well, it would increase by 10,000. So we can, you're right, and I'm gonna wait to put that final number in until we're done with the expenses.
Okay.
Because when we get to expenses, I have a figure in there that's before the subsidy, and then we'll determine what's needed after and plug that in. Evans Plunge. Golden West Capital Credits at 1,000. So there was one, I have a question mark, but you'll see it on your next agenda. There was a change to we're requesting, the advisory committee and the city administrator are requesting a change to the rates, the age used to determine the rates between children and adults. So it's just a one-year change, 14 to 15. We're moving, 14-year-olds have full use of the facility, they're paying the adult admission. That's the change, right?
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
So you'll see a little adjustment in our projection of revenues based on that change. 250,000 adult admission, 18,000 adult discount, 145,000 child admission, 17,500 child discount, 55,000 punch cards, 85,000 adult memberships, 3,000 for birthday parties, 8,000 for lockers, 10,000 for towels, 32,500 for concessions, 200 for showers, 250 for Black Hills Gold jewelry.
Are they still selling Black Hills?
They still have some. We're still selling down our
Not much,
supply.
not much.
Yeah.
Why do they have to put money in if they're
Well,
not buying?
This is
That's
revenue.
Oh, revenue.
Size four.
What's the usually in the lockers? Give it a hand.
Yep,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. Year to year-to-date for lockers is 5,700.
Okay, so I think that 8,000 is low. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it the first time. 11,000 last year, 8,000 this year. Where are
It wasn't 11,000 last year, that's our projected.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse
Yeah,
me.
and we might have over-projected because we only collected 8,800.
Yeah, so this year we're on track for what, 10,000? It's up to you guys.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but we are, he asked what we were at year-to-date, it's at 5,700.
I'm over there at least 3 times a week dropping a passenger off, and that place is just cranking.
Yeah,
They're busier than that.
I'd increase it by maybe 1,000 if you want to.
For lockers?
Yeah.
Okay.
But aren't lockers breaking and need repair?
They were looking at getting some new guts for their lockers, or, you know, for the locks.
Okay,
Is
so
what they were
9,000,
looking at.
anybody object to increasing it by 1,000? Towels, 10,000, 35.
Can we up the towels
Down
also?
souvenirs, or now with jewelry, I think.
I'm sorry, did you have a question, Jeff?
Can we up the towels as well? 1,000?
It's at 6,500 year-to-date, you want to up it by 1,000? I'm not against it.
That's realistic.
11,000?
It looks like concessions is doing good year-to-date.
Yeah.
28?
Very good.
Do you like to raise that?
28 years a day. Is that what it is?
Yep.
I'd say 35.
That's,
How about make it 35?
okay?
All on concessions?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Right under towels.
Oh,
I do think that's low, but I'm okay with it.
Well, and if you look historically, we've never really shot much higher than that, so I don't know if they increased their prices.
We adjusted all the retail prices, so.
But isn't that because our prices increased too, so?
In part, but that's why we're up so high now at 28 for the year to date.
All right,
I'm
so
okay.
here I'd like this gold jewelry, we'll do that.
So
We do
we-
still have
no.
some jewelry.
Are we changing the concessions?
To 35,000, if you're all okay with that.
35 even?
Yep. 5,000 for t-shirts. 20,000 for swimwear. 5,500 for souvenirs. 6,000 for miscellaneous gift shop. Miscellaneous revenue is that monthly sales tax reporting allowance, we have 500. $25 for interest earned from the debt service reserve fund. Which might be higher because we bought those treasury bonds.
Should we go back up a minute to
Sure.
miscellaneous gift shop?
Yep, yes, we sure can.
Since we're already at 6,000, do you think we could go up another 1,000 on that
Yep,
to 7?
comfortable with that.
Jill,
Anybody got
Ms.
any
Rawls.
objections?
Said what,
7?
7,000?
Yeah.
Oh, so our new in 2020 revenue code of the Colorado Health Services EV pool space rental, we have 1,000. I talked to Chris about that, because it seems like it's going real well. She was comfortable with that estimate.
So they're still
Because-
doing the programs over there?
Yeah, for one, you don't know who might get prescribed that as physical therapy, and then for two, you don't know who's gonna be comfortable accepting it because it's in the water. So not everybody who might get prescribed water treatment for their physical therapy might be comfortable with it. So she thought 1,000 was a good estimate, and we're still kind of proving it, and it's very consistent, pretty significantly consistently, so. February prior year expenditures is our work comp audit refunds, and then our operating transfer in. I'm gonna just take that dollar out, but the subsidy we had calculated before must have changed because my notes don't match the number. But I'm gonna take it out for now because we're gonna fill that in when we get through cutting the expenses. So without that, we did 1, 2, 3, 4 increases, I think of $1,000 each. And I have $669,875 without the operating transfer. And then the last one before we can break,
So do you want to what was the amount again?
I took the operating transfer out, so it's gonna be more, but without that, 669, $875. It was 518.7 in the golf course. And then the 701 fund is our cemetery perpetual care fund. It is the sixth of our governmental funds. It receives 1/2 of the payments received for the sale of lots at Evergreen Cemetery and is for the perpetual care of the cemetery. Only amounts in excess of $50,000 can be used, and they can only be used for the care and maintenance of the cemetery. The rest is permanently set aside in compliance with SDCL 932.8. I have $2,500 projected and $25 in interest earned for a total of $2,525. And that wraps up revenue.
Is that okay, Johnny?
Do we have a
Easy part.
total on that? The last
Johnny, do you
total
want to
then?
keep going?
Do we have the last
We've
total?
got time.
Are you ready?
All right, so before we get started on reviewing some expenditures, I wanted to review the answers I provided to Bob's question about the sewer user fee. We noticed an anomaly with great revenue collected in 2021 and pulled up those sales, and those were third-party companies, a number of them, Southern Hills Septic, Black Hills Septic, Superior Sanitation, and a Royal Flush Portables were all in 2021 dumping consistently into the sewer plant and being charged based on the amount that they were dumping. That was the total of the revenue received in that revenue code in 2021. Year to date, and they have no obligation to dump at our facility. They can dump wherever. Year to date, we've collected $1,765, and we have collected that Southern Hills Septic, a Royal Flush Portables, and Black Hills Septic are the three that we've been collecting year to date. So obviously less people are dumping less, and that is where we got our projections from to answer those questions. Does anybody have any follow-up with that?
This must be for the septic system.
Yes. Yeah, they must pump septic systems and then come dump it directly at our wastewater treatment plant. And we give them keys, and it's an honor system. Because we really have no, like, we don't have people come in on Saturdays or at 8 o'clock to do that, so we bill based on that. They do provide written reports that they were there on this date, dumped this much, but sometimes people are there and sometimes they're not. All right. So our plan is to just work until 9. We're gonna go through some of the easier expense funds, so we're gonna jump around a little bit. If we get through these that I have starred, we might hit a few of the departments in the general fund, because the more we can get done tonight, the easier Thursday will be. So our plan is to work till 9. If anybody has any objections to that, speak now.
That's my bedtime.
Sorry,
Is it
8.
till midnight?
Because you can stay up late, can't you?
You can stay here till midnight.
I'm
But
not.
I'm good till midnight.
You're not gonna like the things I say when I get tired.
I gotta be out at 4:30.
So we're in the expenses now.
Yes, so we're on the expenses, and I'll share with you, for those following along on the Banyan reports, which page you can find them, and then on Excel, you can find the tab with the funds.
And before we get into the first department, can you remind me again what the projected revenue,
And it?
projected revenue amount?
Yep, I updated it. $3,497,405. Yep. I thought the first one we talk about is the 212 fund.
Tell me what page you got
Yep.
here.
How about page 28. Yeah, because the general fund takes up some of the pages.
Hey,
As a reminder, we have projected revenue budgeted of 185,000. It's from one source, pretty simple. And then if you remember, I read off to you the ordinance that established it. It's funded by a 1% sales tax on alcoholic beverages, eating establishments, lodging accommodations, ticket sales or admissions to places of amusement, athletic and cultural events. It's traditionally paid 80% directly to the Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce. The additional 20% is used to help cover the costs associated with utilities and building repairs at the Mueller Center Depot. So, right off the bat, I'm gonna jump to the bottom. The other current expense, 148,000, is calculated based on taking 80% off the projected revenue. If we collect more, we pay them more, we supplementally appropriate, and our offsetting revenue is additional revenue
they
received.
get 80%. The other 20% goes towards electricity and stuff here at the Mueller Center.
Utilities and building repairs
So
at the
they
Mueller
get
Center and
100%
Depot.
of this.
The Mueller Center's general fund function, and the depot also is ours. So, you can see, we have 500 for building repairs. We do know, and it's supposed to happen this year, and I think Scott's working with the adjuster. In 2021, we had a hailstorm, and we got some money to pay for the repairs, and we haven't gotten them done yet, and then we had another hailstorm, so now we're seeing what happens with that. So we do have some roof repairs needed at the depot.
Tell them we didn't fix it. That's insurance fraud.
No, they know, they know, and in fact, they're waiting for us to fix it, because there's some more we can clean. So they know, they're aware, we're not frauding them. Telephone, we have 725, electricity, 30,000, and then that gets our projected expenses to 179,225. In this fund, for the first time in several years, we would have a projected profit. And I have a note there that as we get into general fund expenses, if there are some Mueller Center building repairs that are needed, we have some funding here that could be allocated or obligated to pay for that. So these are the good news, easy to talk about ones where the revenue is exceeding the projected expenses.
Craig, you had said they get 80%, and then you talked about the remainder, and you said, so they get 100%.
Well, electricity and stuff for the Mueller Center and Depot, but they get the whole amount.
Who is they?
Chamber.
No,
No.
Mueller Center's ours.
Well, I know the electricity and stuff, but they don't pay rent to be in there.
In, by statute, SDCL 1052A and 2 and our ordinance dictates that. So you can't collect this money, this tax, unless you intend to pay for these things. And so the chamber fits those designations, and so does our Mueller Center and the Depot.
But could we charge them rent? Both places that they're in belongs to the city.
We help support the chamber, and they do not have a surplus every year, so what we take from them.
But like some businesses, you know, I don't know, I listen to different people and the chamber, unless you belong to the chamber, they don't help that business whatsoever.
It supports the city though. I mean, but the efforts that the chamber makes supports the entire city of Hot Springs, whether they're specifically assisting a business with advertising or listing them as a chamber member or not. I feel like this comes up every year.
It's kind of like trickle-down economics.
Everybody comfortable with moving on, or anybody have any other conversations around that topic? Move on. The next one I have started to discuss is bid. That's our 213 fund. I'm gonna skip over the 212 for now, but we might get back to it. That one would be on page 30. You'll remember, the bid fund had projected revenue of $100,100, and we just put that full amount into different expense categories. We have $10,500 for professional services and fees. 10,000 of that goes to it's 1/3 of the social media position. We support that position. They did not request an increase to that for 2023. It hasn't increased since I started here, so. Publishing, we have 70,000 budgeted. Lawrence and Schiller has the contract for the publishing. The South Dakota Department of Tourism provides a matching grant to our bid fund, dollar for dollar, up to $50,000, I believe. They match all our publishing. So $50,000 from the bid fund gives $100,000 in advertising through Lawrence and Schiller. And again, that brings people to our town even if they're not participant in the bid board.
So where you have budgeted 70,000 on publishing,
Yes.
for all intents and purposes, did I just hear you say that we would, actually, there's 120,000 in there?
Well, it's not in here because it's matched and paid for at the state level. So it doesn't come out of ours, but yes.
The equivalent
because of
would
the-
be like 120,000. Okay.
600 for travel and conference. They have previously attended the Rocky Mountain Tourism something. They missed it in 2021 because they didn't have it. And then I think there was only one person instead of two that was able to go this year. But there's some travel and conference budgeted in there. Improvements other than buildings, that can be anything that the bid board decides to spend their money on. But it has to be for the benefit of the city of Hot Springs and not for any specific business.
Can I jump in one more time?
Sure.
Bob, at the beginning, you were talking about going through with Misty and Jeff, and I'm trying to think of the phraseology used,
Lights
water and
on.
lights. As I was looking through the entire budget, I'm kind of on the same page with you with the water and lights, other than I kind of think of it as a have to have, want to have sort of thing. And I guess I kind of wonder, I know that it's nice to be able to support sending people to conferences and so forth, but is that really a lights and water thing? And I'm not just speaking in this instance, but in the entire budget under the travel and conferences.
Let me back into the answer on that. So
Okay.
this is the first department that I did make an adjustment to, and I didn't speak with Misty and Jeff as far as my lights and water. After we went through the total budget, then I separately took a look at it and said, okay, here's the things that, I feel needs keeping the lights and water on, and I'll put that in the budget for the adjustments for council to consider. So this is the first one, and I didn't do anything with travel and conference. But the next one down, improvement under the buildings, Misty was talking a little bit about it. That original figure is $19,000. And I dropped that down to strictly the $5,000 for fireworks. For councils.
But you can't spend this savings in the general fund because this money is only bid money and we have to use it for things that so we put that number in because that was the difference between what we knew we had to spend and what we projected for revenue. So taking any money out of this fund does not help your shortage in the general fund at all, and you cannot transfer bid money to the general fund unless they've approved it.
That's fine, but why so? In 2022, we didn't budget anything.
Yeah, and so they can at any time, because they have some available cash too, say, we want to put lights on the welcome sign. They did that one year. We want to help the general fund wrap the police cars. You can't do that. they do that. Their fund is restricted for what they do, and here's my description. This fund is it was established by ordinance, it follows statute, because we're allowed to have it based on statute, and it's funded 100% by an occupancy tax of $2. The money's partially controlled by an advisory board of bid members, and it has to be used for advertising, marketing, and promoting Hot Springs and for City of Hot Springs improvements. So we just plugged that number in because that's how much revenue we're projecting. You can change it, but then they have an excess. It's not an excess you get to plug into the 101 fund to cover your approved expenses, so it doesn't make any difference if you drop this.
We already get 70,000 for publishing. So,
No, Misty's correct, and I understood that whatever happens with 213 doesn't affect the general fund. And the other enterprise funds, when we get to them, there's only one of those that I adjusted anything in, recognizing that it's not gonna help the general fund, but it's just a general overall philosophy of how we're spending money and how we're identifying things. So I didn't want to kind of look at these any differently than I looked at the general fund. So again, that's why I adjusted this one, but that's for council's consideration. But as Misty said, it's not gonna affect the general fund.
So, is the bid, and you may have said this and I missed it, so I apologize. Does the bid accumulate funds?
Dollars?
Yeah.
Yes, it is a separate fund. So if you do that, whatever, and that you don't give them authority to spend the full amount that they're collecting, it goes into their cash balance and they can ask you to assign that to any expense that they want. We were just balancing their projected revenue.
Okay,
What they
that's-
don't spend goes back into that cash balance, and that's how they've gotten in a strong cash balance position.
Okay.
did they ask for this much?
They do what they want with it after you approve it. Their expenses typically match their revenues. You approve all bills and claims that they pay, but you don't get to dictate what.
Well, no, I understand that.
So we could lower it, but it just makes them have a revenue exceeding expenditure profit line, and
I'll come in later and ask for something else.
they may. So this just gives them a budget authority without you having to supplement and appropriate to spend everything that we're projecting for revenue.
And if they don't spend it, it just
Goes back
goes
into their
into
fund.
unassigned fund balance for 213.
Correct.
So we just as well give them what,
That we've just as well given the full amount of the revenue we're projecting, and they can
Right.
decide where, how they spend that with your approval, I mean.
And if the revenue isn't there, they don't have the budget authority.
But they have enough cash balance right now to cover about $32,000 or $40,000. I can't remember the exact number.
so we're just asking for 5,000 for the fireworks to come out of that 19,000.
Yeah,
Is that kind of what we're doing here?
And they actually in 2020 started that. They started wanting to supplement, we didn't ask, they started wanting to supplement fireworks, and they continued that.
Melanie, do you know, are they continuing?
I only went to
We
one.
don't meet in the summer, we meet again in September.
Yeah, so I only been to the
Yep.
first meeting.
And they worked on this number as they were looking through their projected budgets, you know, talking about the advertising that they've agreed to and what was gonna go where, so they were kind of working off this $100,000 figure. Carl?
In the past, Wally was kind of chairing some of that, and it was his influence, I think, that got us started with that, and I don't know that he's still on that,
No.
so
But they did agree to continue it in their planning.
that was the only concern. I was saying it depends on who's directing it as to what they may or may not want to give or do.
Correct. All right, any other comments, conversations on 213? Next one we're gonna try to hit is the 501 capital improvements on the very next page, 31. As an explanation, this fund was established by ordinance 1138. It accounts for financial resources to be used for special projects throughout the community. Currently, funds designated for community improvements include baseball T-ball improvements, that has to do with recreation, and the North River Street suspended sidewalk project. We got a real big bill in our last claim for it, and so 500,000, I think, something like that. And we know it's a $3.9 million sidewalk, so the baseball T-ball improvements are, it's a transfer into the general fund, and it's transfer out of the general fund into this fund, and then we allow that group of their donated wages they would have made, transfer it into this fund, and then we allow that group to choose what they want to spend that money on. So we have $2,800 estimated here, and then the suspended sidewalk, I have $2.5 million estimated.
It's $2,800 basically is their wages they make.
For their donated hours, yeah.
Then they, yeah, okay.
And then they decide, but the improvements have to be baseball T-ball improvements, and they typically dictate.
Like last year, they got the new scoreboard.
Yeah, this year.
Oh, it was this year.
Yeah, it's so weird, because I just finished the audit, so that's all 2021. And now I'm doing budget 2023, and I can't remember, this is 2022, we're still only halfway through. So many years. All right, any more questions on 501? The next simple one that I'd like to hit, before we get to some more difficult ones, would be the 701 Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund. And Craig, that one is on the very last page, 43. When, 701, 43. When we get to the cemetery department in the general fund, you'll see a couple highlights, and the total is, and we put in zeros, and the total is 1,500. We requested, or cemetery department had requested $1,000 for street walk repairs to add millings, $500 for general irrigation and water lines, and we decided that those are perpetual care expenses. Of course, they have to be reviewed by the cemetery committee, but we decided those are perpetual, and we have the funds available. What did I say, 6,000, 6,900 or something? We have available to spend out of that, so we put those expenses in there. The projected revenue is $2,525. So, oh no, our approximate available balance is 17,000. So we have money in that fund to do any other perpetual care deemed necessary by that board. So that.
The remaining balance from the budgeted revenue towards the expenses, does that also carry over?
Yep, it all adds into the fund.
Okay.
It has its own balance, and it can only be used for these purposes.
Okay.
So, good question. Any others on that? So 612, our solid waste fund, is probably another pretty easy one. That's page 36. It's 612 for those on the Excel spreadsheet. The solid waste fund was created when the city operated our material recovery facility, and it was an enterprise fund because it made money. We eliminated 7 years ago, before I started, 8 years, 9 years ago, we eliminated that. We kept the fund. A couple years ago, the auditors talked to you about my question, can we get rid of this fund and put it in the general fund? And they said you already have it, because there's no assets in the fund any longer. We're not capitalizing anything, because we just pay 100% to the provider, but they didn't recommend closing it out. It's still a service we provide, so we keep it, but it's fairly simple. In the solid waste fund, we had $250,200 in projected revenue. We have $250,850 in projected expenses. Those include $220,000 for professional services and fees, and that's where we pay the service provider, and you'll recognize that number from our revenue projection. We have repairs and maintenance. We are required to do some repairs and maintenance in some of the trash totes. We have 350 there. Supplies and materials, 500. Machinery and equipment of 20,000, and that's for some more new totes. And then we have the transfer out or subsidy to the general fund of 10,000. The machinery and equipment is highlighted. We don't necessarily have to get new totes, but if we take out 20,000, we're just putting a profit back into that fund. And we did buy totes this year. It was my understanding at the time we purchased the totes, we needed almost all the totes we bought. And it's a good idea to have extra totes, and our community's growing, and people have the option of requesting second hands if they need to. We're always putting new people in water service, so we felt, and they requested, we felt it was important to get more totes on hand, and they requested them.
Didn't we just approve them to purchase?
Yep.
40 totes?
It was more than 40.
It's 300.
300, and they needed almost all of them to replace damaged totes or to provide totes for people
How
that
many
need buy
totes
them.
were those covered in?
It depends on the price of totes, which things have gone up. So last year, 17.5, we had to supplementally appropriate to cover the 300 totes. So 300 or less is my estimate.
And there was about $4,000 or $5,000 just in transportation costs. And that's not a lot of big plastic, comes from the south. We tried to work with Sanders Sanitation to finish off a load with them, and we weren't able to get our own quote from Toter in time to partner with Sanders. So this year, we want to work real hard. Let's purchase them before we actually need them to save some transportation costs.
Well, I know we need it, but when you drive around town and see places that people don't live in, dumpy houses and stuff, which Hot Springs has a couple. They have trash cans laying flat in their yard. Why don't we pick stuff like that up? Who's supposed to do that?
The service provider is, and if you see it, let them know at City Hall, because Sanders Sanitation is phenomenal, and that's why our collection has gone up so much at tracking their totes. So if you see one, we can call them, they can tell you if it's being paid for or not. Sometimes the wind blows it over into somebody's yard, so let the ladies at City Hall know. Charlie, who is their driver, is phenomenal at making sure that everybody has a tote, is paying for the tote, and that totes get picked up and dropped off as they're requested,
I
so.
wish you quit driving by my house.
Who's got to keep an eye on the job?
He's falling on the corner, right?
The great trash can debates occur almost weekly about whose can is whose and who needs another can, and they don't want to pay for another can, but if it's overflowing more than 1 or 2 pickups in a row, Charlie tells us they need another can, and so. Although there is a projected small loss, this fund does have an available cash balance, wasn't significantly hurt it, or we can drop the machinery and equipment by the $650 to have a balanced budget in this fund.
What's machinery and equipment? What are they fixing?
It's to purchase new
Fix
totes.
totes?
Nope, it's to purchase it.
Purchase.
So repairs and maintenance and supplies and materials would be to do any repairs to existing.
Because isn't there like $2 off the water bill that goes into this fund?
$2.65, yep.
It used to be $5 that we had to pay, but we necked it down a few years back. Well, they wanted to take it all out, but we thought they should leave it in. So that's like city cleanups and stuff come out of this, so.
Yep. Everybody okay with the way it's presented, or would you like to adjust it to have a balanced budget in that fund?
I think it's okay myself.
You cash apply the $650 with your appropriation ordinance, which takes it out of the savings, but there is that much in savings in this
We
fund.
don't take a hit by doing that, do we? For $650.
I mean, you might take a hit in public, I don't know. I never know what might work people up, but
Well, we need to make sure we have totes.
And tote that large, right?
everybody okay then with the way the 612 fund is presented? 212 fund, although we'll be going back to it. That after we do some expenses for some of the more difficult conversations. And that one, Craig, is on page 29. This page, for those of you following along on Excel, has a few more notes that I'd like to explain before we start reviewing what's projected. At that time, or at the time I presented this and saved it, we had estimated losses in the fund and the golf course of a certain amount, but we've already adjusted those. So we can go through this, but we're gonna have to come back to those numbers after we get done with our conversations in those funds. We do have projected revenues of $797,381. With the expenses the way they are, before any changes, projected expenses $797,115. So we have a projected profit of $266 in this fund. And here's the page that I used to list out the requested donations. 1, 2, 3, 4 of these are established departments within the general fund and not paid out of this fund. And 2 of them are not billed to anywhere in this budget, but have requested amounts in here. So keep that in mind if we approve these donations, which we don't have to answer right now, but these are what has been requested. If we approve the top 2 donation, which is the Balloon Group for $30,000 and Boys and Girls Club for $15,000, it's not billed anywhere in this budget, but this is probably where we'd add in those expenses if they're approved by you. The departments established in the general fund include Prairie Hills Transit, Senior Center, Senior Meals, and Economic Development from Shedco. We did not receive a request from Prairie Hills Transit and did not add. At the time I printed this, we had not received the request from Shedco, but in Mayor Nelson's packet, the $25,000 request is in there. And we have $4,000 request from both Senior Center and Senior Meals.
This is page 29.
Yes, sir. 212 additional sales tax fund, 29 in the expenditures. No, it's because you hid the lines that I haven't.
Oh, that's why.
Did-
Go figure.
Dispatch for $55,000 and the fire department for $90,000 are not considered donations. But those are also requests for organizations to fund it outside. So now I'm gonna go through the 2023 projected expenses that are built into what you have, and it's pretty simple, and then we can talk about any of these other things if you'd like. Another 1/3 of the total for the social media position is paid for out of this fund. It's $10,000, it's never increased since I've been here. Have that budgeted in there. New in 2021, we added the Fall River Channel repairs expense line. We have $45,000 budgeted in 2023. Supplies and materials, if you remember, when we were talking about the 2022 budget and in 2021, we agreed to purchase the road millings from the DOT. 75% of the total was due in 2022, and the remaining 25% due in 2023, so that's the $11,750. I have not heard of any changes to that, or I think it's all the same. Improvement other than buildings, I just took as much money as I could and plugged it in here from our projected revenue. 150,000 should stay in there if we plan to do in 2023 the community access road grant. I'm not sure if we do, but other road repairs are needed and necessary throughout the city.
Is that community access road grant, is that the one for the 17?
Yeah, all
17th
around the
Street,
school,
around the
19,
school, yeah.
Washington, yeah. We do have the 2 assessments we have, Boulder, the 2 assessments we get revenue from, we actually have an expense related to the Boulder Falls road project. If you remember, we had a settlement, and it was truly a settlement. We weren't perfectly happy. They weren't perfectly happy. We had to take out bonds to pay for the improvements so that they could get it, and we got to pay those back. Our payments for 2023 for the two Boulder Falls total $160,350, and the interest is $21,755. And then we have the operating transfers in, which will most likely be adjusted since we've already adjusted revenue. After we get through expenses, that number is going to change.
So which line item has the balloons built in?
It's not built anywhere in this budget. If you guys approve that donation, you have to tell me where you're gonna pay it from.
And Shedco, is it in here or not yet?
Shedco has its own department in the general fund, and I think we plug that number in before we distribute it into economic development, and I'll find it, but it is plugged into the general fund. It can be changed still, but that's a conversation, that I guess we can have now, or we would when we get into that. It is plugged into the general fund.
Yeah, and I would, if you want to take the time to read what Shedco provided, with highlights of what they have done from July 2021 through 2022. If you want to read that tonight and then have a discussion, or if you want to wait till Thursday night to talk about Shedco and the other departments.
Because it really doesn't affect the 2 and 2 fund, so that's probably a good suggestion.
So if we decide to go the funds for the balloons, did it come out of this one?
Yeah. This is where I would see you paying it out of. You don't have money in the general fund. I am not a big proponent of supporting other organizations while you are cutting your department's budget to keep up our existing infrastructure and improvements, but that is the decision this council makes, not me.
That's what I was gonna say too, you know, with all the money we're gonna need, $30,000 is a lot of money. I personally have a problem giving that kind of money to an organization myself. But that's me. I'm only one council.
If I can jump in, Craig, I would say that I'm in total agreement with you. But I think back a few years ago when we were in the very same situation with the Miss South Dakota pageant, and that's how come Miss South Dakota is no longer in Hot Springs. So it's, you know, personally speaking, the $30,000 for the Balloon Festival, I would rather see it come from the business community as opposed from the general government community. But just saying, you know, you tell these people no, and some other community is going to be looking at having a statewide balloon festival.
Well, the person that asked us for this money isn't the one that's putting on the balloon festival.
I
Chamber does
understand
it,
that.
it's
Chamber
our
does.
chamber, and they're not gonna support it the way they do somewhere else. So
I
although
understand.
I agree with what you're saying, I don't think that that would be the case with this one, because some other chamber's gonna have to pick it up. Because our chamber, they have registered or trademarked or whatever, the name, the rights, they put it on. That is the Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce, and as long as they're doing that, the balloon festival will occur in our town.
And after Tammy addressed the council about this request, if you remember, Olivia wanted to add her statement, her response was that it is the chamber who is sponsoring this. It's the chamber that's responsible for it.
And we do, other funds within the city do pay sponsorships currently to this organization.
And one of the things that night when we were, they said, well, it's going to bring so much business into the community. So, Misty, you need to, as you often have to do, correct my math. If we paid $30,000 out, we would need about $1.5 million in
Are you doing 2%?
2%.
Your math sounds right.
in city revenue for us to break even. And I guess my feeling is, I like the Balloon Festival. I think it's a good thing for our community. And at some point in the future, some level of support may be appropriate, but I
And
don't
more than
think.
double our general sales and use tax. We'd have to more than double our general
Yeah,
sales and
but
use tax.
this year, I don't know, and $30,000, no.
Could a portion of that come out of that extra money from, in the bid fund?
That's a big decision.
That's a big
And that,
decision.
this is not a bid meeting. And the bid does, that is one of the funds that does pay a sponsorship and support in addition to the Evans Plunge. And then we provide all the parks and the golf course and the airport facilities, and our employees get paid to support the moving of things and the setup of stuff. And the chamber is 80% funded by the city. So I don't think that you are not supporting the balloon festival if you don't approve this subsidy. But that's not my opinion, that's facts.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Olivia about this, and the mayor, what the mayor's saying, all I can say is that she wasn't happy about the conversation that we had at the council meeting that night when the lady that stepped up more than $30,000. So I'm not a proponent of $30,000 personally.
Or any amount this year? I think I'm hearing that we're at zero.
I know.
Not this
If
year.
anybody has a strong objection.
There's so many other city programs that need the money, to be giving more money away than what we have before. Makes a lot of sense, but little return, honestly, financially.
One we
Our
already
streets
have.
are-
Yeah, I mean, I don't have money to do this stuff.
I think we the same thing, you know, I mean, it's a great idea, but
We don't take it out because it's not built in
We
here
gotta take
anywhere,
care
so
of
you're
our
telling me not to bother
taxpayers.
building it
We just won't
here.
put it in.
Yep. Next.
So on to the next one, is Boys and Girls Club, and we did receive a request from them. We've supported them in the past. It's not, we've done it in different ways. We've done it out of general government, in the general fund. It was approved after a budget was approved, while George was here. And then I think we went last year without a request. And then this year, we did receive a request for $15,000, and this is not built in this budget anywhere. I have the same, personally, comments about giving money to an organization that can raise its own money, and not that I don't support what they do, but while you deny your city government departments what they're requesting, and you give to others, I have a problem with that. And maybe, again, in the future, at some time, we may have an excess where we can entertain supporting an organization that we feel deserves it, but at this time, it's not built into here anywhere. If you built it in here, you're taking away from something else, so that's your determination.
So we didn't give any last year?
So let me pull it up real
The
quick.
problem I have with it is, in the past, and I know this for a fact because the guy's a good friend of mine, millionaires let their kids go to that thing. Why aren't they helping finance that more?
And I don't want to get into determining why that business runs the way they do. I don't think that's your job. Your job is to figure out how to run the city business, not their business.
Yeah.
That's.
The
before
Boys
we
and
start
Girls
asking
Club,
those
I mean,
questions.
there's tons of Boys and Girls Club, can't they support each other? I mean,
Again, those are, you decide if you want to
When I-
give our money to them.
when I was doing Meals on Wheels, okay, Boys and Girls Club, and I'm not advocating for anybody, I'm just saying what I was told and understood. I was given a piece of paper showing where the Boys and Girls Club and the senior citizens was at, and they were on the bottom of the list, okay? But I also know, living in Texas, that United Way has administrative costs also. So, that's just my take on it.
Nothing in 2022. But now we have a request again in 2023.
And I believe they are on the list for United Way.
They do
Yes,
get
they are.
funding, and they have other grant funding sources, and they have the opportunity to collect revenue for the services they provide, although their mission is to keep it affordable, and they don't do, checks on how much money you make or anything. But that's their business, and that's not what we're here to decide.
It's not, I'm not against kids, but it's not a service, the city, it's not a library, it's not the civic center, it's not a police force, it's not a street department. I think it's beyond, especially,
It's childcare, and that should be upon the parents to support it.
Expensive job.
Yeah,
Well, that's pretty free.
Exactly.
It's
I'm concurring with what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing.
So it sounds like I'm hearing again that we received the request and we're not approving for our 2023 budget the allocation of any city resources for the
I
organization.
think at this time, as a council, we need to look at what we can afford to keep the lights on, as Bob would say, the lights and water. And we all know with our road project going through, the cost that has escalated, every change order we get, it's because of an escalated cost somewhere. And it's nickel diming us to death. For us to come up with extra funding to be able to give to somebody, another organization within the community, it's gonna be tough for us to decide to do that. It's just hard.
I'm
Right
not-
now, it's hard.
I think we need to balance the city's budget before we start looking at other entities to help.
Okay. All right, thank you for your feedback.
But before we move on, I have said since I've been on council that I don't disagree with anything that you folks are saying. But when I watch the number of little kids that come and go from the Boys and Girls Club and where they take them, I'm gonna lump Boys and Girls Club Senior Center because they are there in senior meals. I think it says a lot about a community, how we recognize the youngest in our community and the oldest in our community.
It's true.
And to say that somebody's millionaires goes there, I'm equally sure that there are kids that the parents can't really afford to send them there. But I just think it's important that, we have that conversation.
We have
I've
been
said it.
giving 5,000 to senior center, right?
We have four
We've got 4 and 4.
For,
And I was gonna bring up the senior center, because
And I
I
would-
think we should.
So that's why I say, when I look at how a community addresses the youngest, these kids are hopefully gonna be our future, and how we address the folks that have made our community what it is. I just think it's important that we have a serious conversation about that and decide what the right thing to do is.
I think to make it
is to do.
equal, I think we should give the Boys and Girls Club the same that we give the senior.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we don't give to the boys or the Boys Girls Club and the seniors at all, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we really gotta pay attention. With this project that we've got, and other things we've got going on, and what we're gonna do with that little bit extra money.
But
We
hopefully,
don't have any extra.
the Boys and Girls Club
Okay.
will raise the children so that they aren't vandalizing our parks.
And they're already doing it, and they're gonna continue to do it, whether they get this donation or not, just like they did last year with no donation from the city.
The ones that are doing the vandalizing are not the ones that are going to the Boys and Girls Club.
Exactly.
It's a minus situation. Bob's sentiment is right on target. It's how you treat your older people and how you treat your younger people. And it's wonderful when a community can back those organizations that bend over for these people, which is great when you have the capability of doing it. But when you don't have the capability of doing it, you don't have the capability of doing it. A dollar only goes so far. You can't make it go further than that.
I would go along with those two, but we're gonna have to cut something else, that's equal volume,
You've got a lot of other things that you've got to cut if you're going to come up with a balanced budget.
you know?
And I would say you're taking it out of road repairs in this budget if you do it.
And parks.
Which is your.
Well, if we keep taking money out of road repair, we're gonna end up looking like Edgemont. I hate to say that, but the streets are breaking down.
That's why I
all the
plug
time.
every available dollar back into the improvement other than buildings for road repairs in this fund.
And I'm sure we're not taking that as a negative comment towards Edgemont.
No, I'm not. The streets over there, I mean, they probably can't afford to fix them because it costs so much to fix streets, we know that.
But I'm kind of trying to prove the point is like Woodshed Co. and Prairie Hills
They're not
transfer,
getting anything.
which they didn't ask for anything, but we've given them quite a bit in the past to budgets that I'm aware of. We gave them like 10,000, something like that. But they do provide a very necessary service for the citizens within our town that don't have transportation.
They will continue to do so also, and they are a separate organization that has the ability to raise their own revenues with their own decisions. Yeah,
It's a hard thing. But the reality of it is, if we don't balance this budget, we ain't gonna be helping nobody.
and in balancing the budget, you're gonna be telling your employees that are running your facilities what they can't have because you can't afford it.
Well, like we started out, let's do the, everything we need to keep the lights on and just make these discussions at the end.
This
should be
year, I'm
having-
gonna really encourage you to do that. No, we didn't, we haven't for the last couple of years, but the years before that, the council's budgeted for a surplus so that they could help you pay for what you're spending today. So it is possible. It's not impossible, it just takes making the tough decisions, and this is one of them.
Well, we need to cover the basics first and then have this discussion at the end.
And it would be in this fund that you would do that. So if we want to discuss paying for one of these, it's going to be out of this fund. So we don't have to wait to go through the general fund for the conversation on the two that are not built anywhere in this budget.
This improve other than buildings for $264,000. What's all that consist of?
We don't
Tell
know,
me.
it's road repairs
Road?
is what we're planning. And we talked about the community access road grant, and even if in 2023 we don't do that, we still have $264,000 for road repairs that we will pay for. We
Fix
know
your
we
streets.
have way more than that we can do.
So in this budget, if the community access grant were to happen next year, then is my math correct that we would have 114,000 left over for other road repairs for the community?
And I honestly
Yes.
don't think the water department will be able to afford in 2023 the part of this project that needs to happen for us to qualify for the grant. So I would like to continue the conversation of that, but I don't see that happening because I don't think the water fund will be able to afford
Boy,
it.
you're a mood killer, aren't you?
Downer.
Miss
Why
Ray.
we have her? In a good way.
Bob tells me to tell him what he needs to hear, not what he wants to hear, so I try to do that.
You keep us in check.
So you two have visited with Tracy and Billy, and you have an idea of what roads are on our must-be fixed, and 264,000 even just barely touches what we already know, and as time goes on, there's gonna
By
be
then,
more.
it's inflation.
Well, we're gonna fix a few this year, of the real bad ones, so that's gonna help.
2 years ago when we re-asphalted, it wasn't chip and seal, it was re-asphalt from Jennings to Albany, those 2 blocks for $55,000.
Yep.
For 2 blocks.
And actually, a lot of the cost, the higher cost is the curbing and the sidewalks and other related concrete with the roads, not just the asphalt. So that's,
We have dirt roads in town, people would like us to pay for.
Fixing some of the streets that's bad in town, you don't have to do, most of them, you don't have to do curb.
you're right, but where you do have, we got a lot of that falling apart now too.
Yes, we do.
Misty, on the Fuller Channel repairs, you said this is a new expenditure. Can you explain some of that?
We added the line item because prior to that, we were budgeting in professional services and it wasn't occurring. So for several years, we were putting money in for Fall River Channel improvements, and then we weren't doing them, as you've discussed at many council meetings with the proposed river cleanup. So we decided to break the expenses out to ensure that you have a little more oversight in the review of the spending of this money specifically to fulfill that obligation.
So what have we spent this year so far on it, out of the 45, was it 65 last year?
65 last year.
Yeah, what have we spent of that?
Well, we've actually been doing most of that, so we had contracts in 2021 that we
Right.
paid out, and
And
this
we-
year the most of the work has been done in-house.
in-house.
But you wanna start fixing the wall.
Yep,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have to contract that out.
Yeah.
And Tracy and I and Jeff did walk the section of the river from Jennings to Minnetonka, identifying, after we removed a lot of cattails, we could see other damage. And I asked Tracy to put together a request for proposal to go out to get a lot of that fixed.
Okay.
So this is part of the demonstrating to the Corps that we're now taking ownership of the channel and doing what we should be doing.
Right.
And it will be continued. If you look at it now where it was cleaned up, even this year already has growth back. Last year, even more growth. It's not something that's gonna go away
No.
after we do it. You're gonna have to do it continuously. So we did drop it by 20,000 from the projected amount for this year because we're doing a lot more work for the clean out than internally than contracting it out, but
I guess.
alright. So, not putting ballooning or Boys and Girls Club in anywhere. Trails Transit did make a request and I didn't put it in there, and then we'll talk about the other ones when we get to them in the general fund, and I'll make any adjustments in the 212 fund when we get there.
I think we need to go back when we're done and
Well-
discuss the Boys and Girls Club and the senior citizens.
Well, Senior Citizen, Boys and Girls Club is out of this fund. Senior Citizens will be in the general fund. And I'll go back and update it here, just so that we have one place where we can see all the donations, but it won't affect this fund. Okay, are we ready to move on? So our thoughts then were to hit some of the easier departments in the general fund until we get to 9 o'clock. Because we certainly, I'm gonna kind of half-star the 212 fund. We certainly are not yet ready. We're talking about water, wastewater, golf course, or Evans Plunge. We typically save the final 212 and the golf course and the Evans Plunge for the last, and then in the general fund, we typically save the police department till last, but depending on if there's guests here to speak, we may talk about it early, but those are some of the hardest. So there are a few departments in the general fund that aren't too tough, and we'll try to tackle as many of those as we can tonight, stopping where we need to have added discussion. I start with mayor and council. That's page 1. We have a small increase this year from the projected amounts over last year. Salaries and wages is the same at 4,200. Did you have given yourselves any raises? Payroll taxes are the same at 3,000. Workman's comp at 325. Insurance at 250. We have nothing for professional services. We have 50 for supplies and materials. Highlighted is travel and conference. We have 4,750 budgeted there. We have a little bit of additional from what we have budgeted in the past. That's to host the SDML district meeting. Now, the meal costs.
Mayor's fault.
The meal costs are reimbursed by the municipal league, so we won't bear that expense. I've reached out to the American Legion, gave them the date of the meeting. They're open that date. They won't charge us room rental fee if we let them cater. They can cater anything, we can discuss that later. So the 750 would be for liquor, because they won't pay for that if we decide we want to give drink tickets to attendees. The Legion is real comfortable doing that. They'll write down what the person drank, and then they'll bill us after the event. We'd only do 2 if they want to drink more, they could just go buy it themselves, was the talk that we had. Mayor Nelson can talk a little bit about the ribbon cutting, but we have 2,500 and then 1,500 for other training for you to attend. And I'll let you take it from here.
So as Misty said, the amount is, there right now is 4,750. I adjusted that down to 2,000, probably even go to 1,500. Misty had talked about the South Dakota Municipal League training for the folks that attended the district, not training, the district meeting in New Underwood. Craig couldn't get his hand up fast enough.
That's because he kicked me, you know.
That Hot Springs needed to host that, I don't necessarily disagree with it. And then the other one is a ribbon cutting. In 2023, ideally, we're gonna have a brand new highway, we're gonna have a brand new suspended sidewalk. I mean, this is huge. And, you know, my vision of it is, Governor Noem went to bat, Mayor Cotty, you know, worked real hard with the governor to get the $2.8 million funding for Hot Springs. New highway, so I would like to, you know, invite the governor to be here to do this, get the citizens out, get the folks from Complete Construction, get the folks from the Department of Transportation to put this on, to make this a big event, to get the public involved in it. But keeping the lights and the water on theme, we do not need to do a district meeting, and we do not need to do ribbon cutting. Council, what do you want to do?
I would say we volunteered for the district meeting, so it'd be difficult at this point to back out, but you don't have to provide drink tickets.
So again, we don't need to do this.
Is this going to be in 2023 for certain, or will it be 2024?
It might end up being 2024.
The ribbon cutting. The district meeting is scheduled for a date, is it March? I can't remember the date, but in March for 2023, and we already said we'd do it, which takes away the opportunity for other communities to say they'd do it. But I'm sure if we pulled out, something could be arranged.
Again, just being consistent and fair across all of the departments, what we need to do versus what we don't need to do.
Well, ribbon cutting, I mean, if it's possibly gonna be in 2024, couldn't this just be put on the next budget?
Well, and here are my questions, like what do you, so you invite people, you don't have to pay for that. You don't have to print a fancy invitation. And then I was like, well, how much does a ribbon cost? How much do the scissors cost? What else and then we talked about like refreshments and really making it you'd like to have some kind of, service isn't the right word, but gathering of those higher ups and a reception of some of those people, provide some things, but it's 2,500.
It's like a pop.
What's the possibility that one of the civic organizations, or several of the civic organizations can kick in for that? I mean, it's a community thing as opposed to a governmental thing, really.
Chamber of Commerce.
I mean, the Rotary does, you know, make a little money on all the booze and stuff they sell to the family organizations.
The bid group.
Yeah, we could force them to, but we could certainly ask.
Ideally, you know, those conversations will happen, but if they don't, then, you know, my comment to Misty is, my first one was 5,000, I don't know what this costs. I'm spitballing here, folks.
He said 5,000.
Well, you know, I was
So
thinking, you know,
it's 2,500.
the road construction may run a little bit late, so it may go through most of 2023, so I wouldn't even be looking at a ribbon cutting reception until like 2024.
We don't know. It is projected and they have not extended their projected completion.
So was it gonna be late 2023 when you were done?
September, right?
September?
I think it's September.
You're gonna have to kick it in the butt to be done by then, I'm
We'll
sorry.
just have to pray for lots of rain.
Well, we could drop it and then ask Alita to make brownies.
There you go.
Buy brownie mix.
Only 5,000. So the first discussion, you know, in this one, I agree. I think if the 750 breaks our budget for the district meeting, we have real problems. I would make the same argument, if 2,500 is gonna break our budget, we have real problems. We budget it in, or we don't, and we take it out of contingency, or we do something. But I really feel we need to do something big. This is the biggest thing to happen in this community for a long time. And none of us will be alive to see it, anything like this happen in the future.
I know some that makes $800 a month, because it isn't half. And,
Well, given, especially with the completion of the road project, that there is some level of uncertainty there, would that be appropriate to use contingency for that? Or is that?
For a ribbon cutting,
Yeah.
you can determine what, if we're budgeting for it, then we'll subtract that from what we're budgeting for contingency and leave it in here. if you're saying we'll decide later in 2023 and we'll use contingency, then we'll take it out of here, we'll just leave contingency how it is. and
That's what I'm saying, is because there's some
You can,
uncertainty.
it's whatever you deem necessary, just spend your contingency.
Since the new amount adjusted from 4750 down to 2,000, the new amount would be 48,125, and that's built into the new deficit of 68,000. The amount that I'm projecting is 48,125, not what you have on here.
5875. So when we leave it at 2,000, that's all for just random training, whereas 750 still being dedicated to the hosting. So we're just taking
I
out.
think you're committed to that, I think you have to stick with it, that's, I'm committed.
But
Would not make us look good if you cancel that.
So leave it, change it, 2,000, 2750, 40, 750.
Yeah, that'd be
But a month,
1250 for
not
technical
hard.
training and then 750 for the district meeting.
Well, if worse comes to worse, we can always go back and ask bid for the betterment of Hot Springs and for the Hot Springs at the bid getting before.
But again, you can ask.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm
Put that
taking,
note in there, ask bid.
Just like everybody's asking us, we can say no, but.
so I'm leaving in 750 for the SDML district meeting. I'm taking out the 2.5 for the ribbon cutting. I'm changing the training to 1,250.
Come up with 2,000.
Yep,
Do a total of 48,125.
yep. Any more conversation on that one?
Tell me the amount, the total amount again.
48,125.
No, I mean, I'm sorry for that line.
2,000.
2,000. 2,000 even. 1,250 for other training for you guys and 750 for the hosting of the district meeting.
So from 4,750 down to 2,000, right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, the next one I thought would be easy enough to talk about tonight is contingency. That's on the very next page, page 2. SDCL 921-2, amount shall not exceed 5% of total budget. That is the total budget in the general fund, not in all funds. And we have 75,000. We used to budget for this in other current expense, but actually statute says you can't spend directly out of the contingency fund, you can only transfer out. So now we budget for it and transfer out, we have 75,000.
But we got a bunch of road project left that's got a bunch of surprises.
Well, and so because we transfer out of contingency, it's not a real good, this is, you budgeted 75. You've already spent the difference between the 75 and the 27,340. That's all you have remaining of what you budgeted. So you did budget 75, which
I see,
I repeated in this year.
okay. I see. I will probably spend it too.
No changes to contingency? All right, the next one would be the very next one on page 3, legal. 2021 was a big year, but we got a lot done and a lot of things settled, and hopefully we don't have very many of those things, but we do pay our lawyer, and we pay him both for his services and then a flat amount for attending the council meeting. So 55,000 is what we have protected.
If we only knew back when they built the library, just pay for the day windows.
Right? Oh, but it's settled, and that's a big deal, so.
How is it that we've only spent 25% of what was budgeted last year?
Our attorney has not attended a few council meetings this year, and he also bills us for the services as we request them. So how much time he spends on something and how many questions we ask him and problems we have is something my crystal ball hasn't been able to project accurately. And then we're also 30 days behind in billing, because the month occurs before he bills us, so.
But he bills on a regular basis?
Yep. So we can put it back down to 50 and save $5,000, but if something comes up that we need additional assistance for, we may be bumping it back up or moving contingency.
You don't spend it, it'll go back in general fund?
I haven't received any and I haven't received any indication that he's gonna raise his rates, but he's asked me what I thought about it, and I told him I didn't think it was a good idea. So.
Guys pay for that new Arati bill.
I think you can help his case by not bringing a different fancy vehicle.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, one you just built.
I think we should drop it to 50.
If we don't spend it, it goes back in general fund anyway.
I say leave it, and if
Yeah.
it's spent, we've got, it's a good.
Sounds like more for leaving it at 55,
Like a savings account.
if we get to save it. I'm not sure we'll get to
I
save
was gonna
it.
say we might need it somewhere else in the budget.
Legal's such an unknown.
It is such a, and we don't want to skimp.
Well, we
If
only
need
did
his
50
legal
last,
advice.
we only did 50 last year.
We projected 50, we don't know what we needed yet. In 2021, we spent 310,000.
Well, that's, like you said, a lot of backed up business taken care of.
And, yeah, we don't know if there's gonna be some backed up business we have to settle this year either. I wish my crystal ball were better,
Everything over a cop car, maybe.
but maybe. So it sounds like the majority wants to leave it at 55? Okay.
I think so.
I think so. I understand where you see an opportunity, Dan, I'm not. It's something we have so little control over.
All right, so the next one I think will be easy enough to talk about is the police department. No, I'm just kidding. Make sure you're still paying attention, get your heart going.
You feel good, so you're.
How about, Bob, would you prefer I skip over support services till we have the PD conversation, or can we go ahead and talk about that one now? Dispatch, support services, page 9, or 8, I'm sorry.
9 or 8?
8.
Go on.
Whichever one you like, whatever
Because we'll
one's
probably
best.
talk about 9 after it. So page 8 is support services, has one expense, Fallsburg County Dispatch. Since I've been here, and I don't know, you can tell me even before I got here, how much
All
was
been the same.
It's always been $55,000, but you're up.
But
See.
She wasn't calling you what? You said, but you're up.
You're up, Bob.
need a bite, Mike?
My heart hasn't settled down from let's talk about.
I said another easy one.
Easy one.
Support services. It's a small community, I wouldn't be surprised that someone's heard that the county is looking at asking for more money for dispatch services than what we're currently paying them. I was able to get a hold of Joe Falkenberg today and ask him that specific question, and he said, yes, they will be asking for more money. He's projecting a 50% increase. So that would be $27,500, that would take us up to $82,500. He's asked me to attend their county budget meeting on August 4th. And the other half of the conversation I'll save till Thursday night when we talk about the police department. But they are going to be asking for more money. What they had said last year when we were having the same conversation is when they look at the data, the number of dispatches, the bulk of the dispatches come from the city of Hot Springs.
So my comments when we discussed this today and your decision tonight is, do I put $55,000, which is what we have paid in the past in this budget, or do I put $82,500? I recommend you leave it at 55. I think we need to help Bob be prepared for that meeting to discuss how dispatch is funded, whether or not the city is responsible for the calls that go in for the city, since it is county dispatch, because there are grants and funding for dispatch that we don't get, they get. So why should we pay, and can we get that funding? So if you want us to pay you more for dispatch, can we get the funding for the dispatch services for our calls? And then we have a bigger discussion to talk about. So what you have to decide is we leave 55 in
So are
here
you
now.
going to that meeting with him?
Well,
In lieu of.
yeah, if you want to hire somebody else to do my job while I'm not there, I can attend all these meetings, but, yeah.
Well, I think you have the arguments
But
that are needed.
I don't know, these are questions, it'll have to be a dialogue, we'll have to understand, and if he requires or asks me to go, I'd be happy to, but, what do we wanna put in here now, today? And then we have to have our budget, our first reading of our ordinance by statute by September 1st.
We can
If we
always,
leave it at 55, and he has meetings on August 4th, and we know we have to change it, we can have a special meeting to come back and talk about that.
we can always say we already budgeted 55.
That's
You
what I
guys are
said.
SOL
Cry-
till next year.
Yep, cry on their shoulders after we have this dialogue, say, we're really short because of the road project, is there any way we can, and we have some other ideas about what might change in our
Heard me say that.
counties for law enforcement, then can we have one more year to plan for and pay for this increase? If it's- That was the
And let's
other
balance it
thing.
against what they've committed to the road project, you know, in this
So that's what you decide tonight. I say leave it at 55. We have these conversations. We have a special meeting if we need to decide where the other 27.5 comes from. If we lose the argument and everything stays the same, before we pass the first reading of our appropriation ordinance.
I say leave it as is and then have a conversation.
I think if you change it to the 80, whatever the rate, it's just gonna make it easier for them to ask for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And harder for you to balance your general fund.
Let's leave it.
Because I don't think you should use cash for this year, even if you've done it in the past, because I think that's been a poor judgment in the past, and I think it'll continue to be poor judgment with what we're facing.
If I forget to ask you, Bob, or remind you when you do go to that county meeting, that if there's an E911, the advanced next level of 911, if we have that, that's federally supported, so there's money that comes. Are you okay?
No.
Computers are dangerous. Anyway, well,
Is he-
not
is
really
he
a conversation
crying?
here, but
We
just so
have
you
some
know.
work to do to prepare for
Yeah.
that August 4th meeting.
Absolutely, Bruce needs to sit down
I
and
agree.
figure out,
That's your left arm. Are you having issues with
no,
your
I just
left
got a
arm?
finger that cramped.
Okay.
So
So
we-
the cardiac nurse sitting here.
We've decided to leave it for now with the understanding that if we're forced to figure out where we're gonna come up with it so we can continue to have dispatch services, then we'll have a special meeting to address that before we pass our budget ordinance.
I appreciate that comment, and as a cardiac nurse, remind Misty not to do this police department.
Okay, I hear you, Doug. Okay,
We're
so
all involved.
I'm gonna go ahead and highlight it, but I'm not gonna change it. I'm gonna leave it at 55. We're gonna move on. To page 9, fire.
EMT,
We left that, this is an easy one, we left it at 90,000. That's what we've given them for the last, how many years, since 2017?
for ever.
Even longer before that?
2015, we gave them 100, and 14, we gave them 85.35.
Oh.
Did Dillard come to public safety and say that he's looking for more money?
I asked if anybody had heard from him, and they said no.
Didn't he?
I don't remember.
If he did, I probably didn't take him serious, because he's always made
Yeah.
the comment of you guys took some money away from us several years
Yeah,
ago
so
with the
that-
promise of giving it back, and you never have.
That's what I've heard.
1 year, it was more.
And he wasn't here, so he don't know that.
To be technically correct, none of these people said that.
Right.
So it,
I don't
it
know.
doesn't matter if this,
Yeah.
I've been here for a while. I might have.
But we don't support them like,
We don't consider that the same as a donation because they provide a service. It's more like dispatch. If they're gonna do it, they're providing a service, it's like a contract.
But y'all have to remember that they do get money from the district too. so-
Yeah, they tax.
So it ain't just our money they work with.
Are we all okay with leaving that at 90?
Yep.
All right, so the next one, I thought might be easy. well, not so easy, my crystal ball needs work on this one, but snow removal, page 13. My first note on that page is best yes. I think somebody had some ideas of something to drop in here, but we end up supplementally appropriating at the end of the year if we don't cover enough. And it's really difficult because the snow occurs during the period of time that we can't do any more supplemental appropriations. So we try to guess how many hours our employees are gonna need to use and how many people will respond and how much supplies we have. So 28,000 is our best guess for salaries and wages. 2150 for payroll taxes, 1,600 for retirement. Vehicle repairs, we have 5,000. That's routine sander maintenance, plow tips and edges, and hydraulic mount repairs. I don't know what aprons are. I think you added that note.
For cooking, yeah.
Oh, okay. We could maybe budget less, but then if something broke down, we would be using contingency or something else for that, so.
How is it that they spent so little so far at 22 on repairs?
Because they haven't been moving a lot of snow yet this year.
Well, they did earlier in the year in 22.
But they didn't have to repair anything, nothing broke. So.
Would that
I
be
don't think
working?
it snowed in January.
Right.
I said, I don't think it snowed in January.
Well, it sure did. It sure did in March and April.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah, so we have equipment repairs, 2,500. Again, those two, vehicle repairs and equipment repairs, we talked about lowering those, but that was just a best guess estimate. Supplies and materials went up a little bit. That's to purchase salt and sand. They do try to purchase in the off-season. They do buy it through a competitively bid procurement contract. You never know how much you're gonna use. Really, at the end of the year, what they have left over should be valued as an inventory asset, but we haven't historically done that. We just purchase it and use it. And they try not to have too much carryover, but they have to have some, because they have to have supply on hand, because they don't know when it's gonna snow to order it when they need it only.
Do we have any idea what percentage of is sitting there in our quote savings account that we might not have to order?
So I'm talking about the material of
Right,
sand.
right.
I don't, you guys who go out to the street shop, do you have any idea how much is sitting out there? I don't.
There's
Didn't
not a
know
lot.
we go out there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a
The
lot.
last big snow about wiped us out.
Okay.
For one thing, that 5,000 for vehicle repair,
Yep,
2021, the rear end went off a truck, that's why.
so that was an anomaly.
Yeah, so, you know, if anything breaks on those trucks, that 5,000 isn't gonna last very long.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, we could lower that, and we're just estimating anyway.
I
It
don't
probably
think we
won't
should
cover a
lower it.
big break.
No.
Okay.
No,
1,000 for minor tools, that's where they purchase brooms, miscellaneous hand tools, stair scrapers, and then 6,500 for gas, oil, and diesel. Again, kind of a crapshoot. And we don't have any big machinery or equipment purchase for this year, so $66,750. No changes to that one?
We don't have any payments on a big piece of machinery?
Not
for
in
this
snow
part.
removal. Great question. I think we'll just go to street lighting, which is the very next one.
14?
Yep. 45 more minutes or less.
Has anybody, quick note, turned in that light that's on by Bob Guards all the time, that big light? There's a light that's on my bar's way up there.
We're coming up to university, it's pretty dark up the top of my house.
Yeah, but at noon it isn't that dark.
That's some great feedback. We follow up with Billy or somebody on that.
I got it, I didn't know.
And if I need to contact Buckles Energy or
And
something.
when we have our work order system in place, we'll be able to track that stuff. That's my plug.
Light by
Talking about
Buckles.
keeping the lights on, we need to save the energy of turning them off when they don't need light.
Yep, that would be great. So, street lighting. We contract out lighting repairs. It's a flat $750 a month. And then a number of repairs are not covered in that contract, so anything we have to do with our flashing lights, our stop signs, or things that need repairs that aren't covered in the contract, we have an additional 2,000. So our contracted out expense is 9,000, and then we have 2,000 added for repairs that we wouldn't have covered by that. 500 for other repairs and maintenance when it's performed in-house. Supplies and materials, 250, and then utilities, 85,000. In 2021, we were notified by Black Hills Energy that because of Winter Storm Uri, everybody's bills were gonna increase by 11% for 12 months. That 12 months ended this year, so you will see a small decrease in some of our utility expenses because that 11% cost adjustment that they added for that storm has expired this year. There could be another storm and they could decide to add more money to our bills.
Are you sure the building go down? Have you seen their building up by Rapids?
Yeah, it's nice, yeah. They have a super nice building. I'm not totally sure, but we have $96,750 budgeted for street lighting. Does anybody have any changes or?
Is there, I guess I shouldn't ask this, I'll ask later. Because we have to move a light and I don't know what that's gonna cost, and I don't know if
That'll
they'll
be
get
this
it done
year.
this year.
Oh.
If they get it moved this year.
Yeah, and I say for all those things that you're talking about in your committees, that you're trying to get this done this year, that you talk about how you're gonna pay for it. When you do it, if it's not built in this budget. Do you wanna take a break? I noticed Bob left, she left, do you wanna take a look? We're doing good, we're chugging along, not you, Bob, this stuff, and now she needs a break. So let's keep this one a little shorter.
You didn't know it.
Let's get back together by 8:30, or sooner if we're all back in time, but let's.
20, 25-minute break.
We're moving along pretty good.
Right,
Kaboom.
we're done with street lighting.
Yep.
I'm following their advice.
All right, how about we jump to street cleaning? The next page, let's go on with this page by page. So this one does have something that's a topic for discussion. I'm not sure which one you're pulling up, but mine still has 70,000 in here.
I don't know why, mine are, never mind.
Because you didn't pull up the right one.
Recreation math, that's
Uh-huh.
right.
So, street cleaning has the topic of discussion, we'll get to at the bottom. Salaries and wages, the work is currently shared by 2 employees, 7,500. I don't know how much time they're gonna spend on the street cleaner. You look year to date, where we're at, what we spent in 2021. Trying to best guess if we might wanna increase it or you let me know. Payroll taxes are tied to salaries and wages, so is retirement. $500 for equipment repairs. That's so much lower because we have had a lease agreement with our existing street sweeper. We didn't own it outright, so things were covered. Gas, oil, and diesel, I don't know, a little bit of an increase, we estimated 3,000. Machinery and equipment, we've gone back and forth between 40,000, 4,250, and 70,000. So 2023 is our buyout option year. We signed a lease agreement for 5 years to finance the street sweeper. If we do not buy it out for $70,000, we have spent, even if I leave the 70 out, we have spent, I left one of them out, hold on, there's a little bit more. If we do not buy it out, we turn back in this machine just like we rented it. We have no asset we add to our assets. We give it back and we start a new lease. We spent $170,000 for 5 years to borrow a street sweeper. You'll decide if that was a good choice or not by how you determine whether or not we buy this out or we turn it back in and we just lease another one.
So let me qualify. The option is the 40,000, which we
And Billy
think,
actually said 40, I think he said 4250 or 43 was a better estimate because we haven't looked into yet
Right, we
what it
don't
would
know the
cost to
details.
lease a new one.
or that's gonna say 70, so we can buy this one out.
And then we don't have a lease payment and we use it till it breaks. Or
That's,
you take
and,
it.
oh, that's the operative word. Adam is telling us that this thing is really, even after only after 5 years, it's ready to start having things break on it. I'm not sure, it's a lesser of two evils.
Problem I have is they don't have very many hours,
No, and that's a lot of money just to rent.
Yeah.
but Adam says he thinks the hydraulics might be starting to go out, but, you know, thinking and knowing's two different things.
You're right.
And how much does it cost to fix hydraulics?
It all depends
Compared,
on what it
it's
is.
not $42,000.
Oh, it could be in the $20,000 range. All depends on what goes out. Cause that street sweeper is mostly hydraulics.
Is there always two men that operate that?
No, they're not always together, there are two that are trained to operate, so sometimes one does it,
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
another
I've
does
always
it.
seen two in this. I didn't know if it takes two to.
They were probably
tango in
training,
there.
if you saw two of them in there, one was probably training the other. So my suggestion is if we do turn it back in, that we're negotiating a different kind of lease next time. Because if we intend to not buy it out, our lease
Right.
payments might be lower, if we want to keep doing that. But I still say $170,000 for 5 years of how many hours is on that thing, that was poor financial decision.
What we,
If we're just turning it back in. But if it's a lemon, then it might be the right choice to do this now, but we should.
what I think we should do is get the maintenance records on it and look at that before we make a decision, and see what they've had to do to it the last 5 years. I mean,
Very little because
Yeah, Adam
it's
said very little.
covered by, anything big would be covered by the lease. They keep it up and running for us.
Jeff, is there a standard program for how often they are going out on each street with that?
No, they are preparing now a maintenance schedule for streets, once we get to the project. But they're doing it at time permitting now, is
Being
what they're doing.
pulled so many directions.
They're so scattered out now that they're just doing as they can, so that's as needed in areas that are identified.
Okay, part of the reason I ask is in the little area of the town that I live in, I've seen the street sweeper out maybe 7 or 8 times. For the small area I'm in, I mean, I'm willing to have a little dirtier street and save them out a little less often. But $34,000 a year is what you're talking about, Misty, for having a street sweeper. I mean,
Without an asset. So if we buy it out, we have an asset. Then hey, if we have to fix, we fix, but we still have this depreciable asset.
Well, it
And I
can-
don't know how long they're supposed to last, but 5 years is
It
pathetic.
kind of
For
sounds as though even if we buy it out, we can have a liability.
Okay, well, if you were, let me ask this question, if we were to buy this piece of equipment, how many years do you depreciate it, what's your schedule?
Well, I can pull that up. DLA has a recommend, I think it's probably about 10 years,
I was
but
gonna say
DLA
it's-
has and that's what we follow, is what DLA has. So let me look at their
I think it's
depreciable
10
asset
years, huh?
schedule.
I mean, tractors don't depreciate that much, so I can imagine a street sweeper.
I think heavy machinery is all 10 years, as I would,
Yeah, that sounds about right, but I'll look it up.
It is federal.
I know tractors look like.
of the same schedule.
While Misty's looking it up,
10 years.
I don't kind of disagree that we rented it versus building up equity in it. But at the time that I've been on council, what I've seen happen is purchase a piece of equipment and run it until it drops dead. And we had it happen on Garden Street when we were preparing for Jennings Bridge replacement. They needed to get out to Garden Street. They took the front end loader out there that, as a council, at the time, we knew we should have replaced it long before we did. They scheduled it to get the work done the week ahead of when the Jennings Bridge reconstruction would start, and it died in the middle of the road. And they had to haul it up to Rapid City, and they had to lease a vehicle because they didn't have equipment that they could count on to work when they needed it to. That would be upside to leasing every 5 years, and both Adam and Billy have said it's getting to the point they recognize it's going to start needing repair. And whatever repair they do to it this year, it's gonna need repairs the next year, it's gonna need repairs the next year. And we'll keep having this conversation about when should we stop putting new money into an old piece of equipment, rather than get rid of it when it's starting to show wear, and get these folks a new piece of equipment that they can count on to do the job that we're asking them to do. That's the road we head down. And the council can change this decision. We need to recognize that buying a piece of equipment expecting it to last 20 years and finding it difficult to maintain it, or find money to maintain it, isn't doing right by the employees.
So we've had the wheel loader for 20 years, and we are replacing it in 2022.
So why, it's out here, the new one. Why didn't we trade the old one in if we're
We
trying to
did,
give?
we sold the old one.
It's still out there.
This is the new one.
No,
It's
there's
not.
two
The
loaders up
pellet-
there.
Oh, loader, yeah, I'm sorry, I thought we were
No,
doing
not-
street
no.
sweepers. Like, we did do
No, I was
something.
talking about
Oh,
the
sorry.
loader, and that's why do we have the old one? Why didn't we trade it in? So now we got two big loaders sitting out there.
Maybe they want a backup, I don't know,
That's
in case
what I was
something,
told.
because equipment breaks down.
But
Even
Well,
if you have
that-
brand new equipment breaks down.
Okay,
Anybody
that
that has a
makes
business that
Can we
runs
jump
equipment.
back?
That
Can we
brand
jump
new
back to
loader
this?
we just leased.
Can we jump back to the sweeper?
That.
If we decide to turn this in, we get about a $27,000 savings on,
But if we buy it out, I get to depreciate the expense, and now we own an asset.
On the other side of that, I can guarantee you, we can put this at 42,000 or whatever the final number was. We can guarantee that's 42,000 for the next 5 years. Whereas if we keep the old piece, I can't guarantee you.
Oh, you mean if we get a new lease? We haven't
Right.
checked into the leases yet.
No, I know,
We
I'm
don't
saying,
know
right.
how
And
much
we're saying we think
that'll
it's 40, 42, we don't know exactly, but I'm just saying.
be. Could be
I
50.
That
I
would be right.
guess, the question or the direction I'm heading is, if we make the decision not to take the asset, because, and maybe I don't understand this, if we depreciate, what does that do for the general fund?
When we own it, we will book 5 years of depreciation, and the expense will come out because we own it. And then we depreciate it out over 10 years. Because we have an asset that's expected to have a useful life of at minimum 10 years.
So at
If
the end
we
of-
trade it back in, then we just rented it, we have no asset,
But
and we just continue to lease
If we
some
do
piece of
that,
equipment.
does that help us any on the deficit we're trying to manage right now?
Right now I have 70,000 in there. If you change that to 42 or 43, which is a guess, then it does save you, which will help your deficit. Having the asset is different than just balancing the budget. But
No, I understand.
going forward over the next 5 years,
Got
you
that.
could save money because you're not paying to rent a piece of equipment that now you own. But it's a gamble because that piece of equipment may have some major repairs that are needed.
But again, we're into the unknown zone
Yep.
because if we lease, we reduce our equipment repair budget potentially.
But if we own the asset, we could use it for 20 years like we did the loader, and then we're not paying annual lease payments.
However,
So
when
it's
you
the
depreciate, you're not taking that depreciation.
Greg,
on-
we have people in the shop. can
No,
work
we're
on
taking
hydraulics.
the whole expense, we're
Oh, that's-
depreciating
yeah,
outside.
that's-
Right, right.
Right, but I'm just asking. you.
How long did we own the last street sweeper?
Oh, we
Oh,
had that forever.
yeah, for more years than
It
10.
was a dinosaur.
I think it was like a 98 or something, I can't remember.
So we got our money's worth out.
Oh,
We
boy.
did, but we were repairing it quite a bit before we decided to lease the new one.
The problem is, right,
So,
right on that,
we saved money though,
We
we didn't
did,
spend
yes.
those payments
How
on
much
it.
was it costing us per year to run?
Right, with the repairs.
I couldn't tell you.
Sorry, you can look back at the history on here, but I can't guarantee all the expenses were directly tied to the
I mean, if a
loader.
piece of equipment's supposed to last 10 years, I would think we should utilize it for 10 years.
I get, equipment repairs, the largest it was in this, we've been tracking since 2013, was $13,000 in 2013. We had a $15,000 year in 2016, but then, well, that's when we started leasing it, so.
The problem is, we got two pieces of equipment we're leasing now, a backhoe and a loader.
Those are to buy though. We set those leases up to be paid out at the end.
there's
So
no
there's no
buyout.
buyout option. The amount we're paying, when we're done with the lease, we own the asset.
Owned by.
And we're not
Okay,
paying a
lease owned.
balloon payment.
And why didn't we do that at Street Sweeper?
The determination was made by that council to do it this way, keep the payments lower.
Well, that's where it comes
No,
in.
the answer is, they wanted new equipment, they didn't want to go down this road of, well, we'll
know what you're saying.
We'll make it work.
We'll keep it for 20 years, and it'll break, and we'll put money into it, and the people that need to count on it to use it won't be able to.
But, you know, and then when they want trucks and stuff, they go buy old stuff. It don't make no sense to me.
Well,
Because we're telling them that as a council, we're not gonna give them the revenue they need to get equipment they can count on the next 10 years.
The
And it always
useful
comes
life
down-
is 10
Well, it would fit our budget better if we would continue to lease right now, right? Because we can't really afford $70,000.
You don't know that you could make that determination, really.
And going forward, that would be worse on your budget than if this asset lasts 10 years and your repairs are minimal.
Right,
So you're making a short-term fix,
Right.
but you're creating longer-term added expenses. You're just trying to fix today's problem, but what you have to determine is if you're willing to continue to just lease, which is essentially renting, or if you want to own the asset at this point and pay for repairs after we own it.
Well,
And I think looking at the maintenance records is probably a good idea, because if we've maintained it well, I don't know why you couldn't expect it to last at least 10 years.
And on the positive side, we do have a strong mechanic now, which we may not have had, I don't know.
Yeah, we said the last guy was great too, and I would agree that he was good too. Everybody's a little bit different, but
They don't come with a warranty or extended warranties or anything like that? When you lease it or purchase or whatever? Or is the warranty just over when the
If they're
lease is
brand new
over?
there, it's just like a vehicle, you only have.
So long.
The only thing, it all depends on what everybody else decides to do. But if we do get another one, we need to do it like we have the loader and the backhoe rented to buy, lease to buy.
then your payments will be higher even.
I know
So
they'll be higher,
then
but
if you're up around the
There-
70 again, why don't you just keep
so
this
you're
one?
saying
Yeah.
it's, we'll, have the things paid off in 5 years, and we'll wanna keep them for another 15. So why don't we just buy this one out and keep it for another 15? But then we have our street people saying that we aren't giving them new and improved and reliable equipment.
Well, that's,
Well,
I don't think that's a driving force here. I mean, we all want to drive new stuff, but, you know.
that street sweeper's only 5 years old.
I agree,
I mean,
it should last another 5 at least.
I haven't heard the street folks themselves say, well, you're not giving us new stuff. That is the reality of the decisions that are being made. That we're not keeping them in equipment that they can rely on.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, both Billy and the mechanic said, replace this thing. So the recommendation is to buy out what they're telling us we should replace.
If we replace it and release it, I would at least put
So they're saying
55
it
or
was
60
built
in
on a
there,
Friday.
Or 70 and paid
That's what
off.
they're saying,
But we
that
don't
it's a
know.
lemon.
No, I don't believe they said it's a lemon. There are more expensive pieces of equipment out there. This is the one that we chose to afford.
Who's the one that makes that?
So we
give them
dropped this
options,
down
they
to-
can take the cheaper one.
So we dropped this down to 43.
I'm not comfortable dropping it 43.
I'm just saying, okay?
Gonna buy it out.
And what
You
you're
need a
talking
new
about,
lease.
and what we're talking about is renewing the lease, getting rid of this piece.
we don't know if it's 43. We don't know what a new one will cost.
And if we're gonna buy it out, it's
That's-
gonna be
that's
more.
just a
Right.
guess.
About
And I'm just
70.
rehashing everything that's been
Yeah.
said. I'm
Yeah.
not putting anything in stone. I'm just making sure my brain's straight on top of this, okay?
Okay.
And I want to hear what everybody's saying before I make my informed decision on something like this. Yeah, it's a conundrum. I mean, what you're saying about Billy down there, I mean, yeah, I've been around Billy long enough to know, I take his judgment very well, you know? But then again, how do you know if it's gonna last forever? How do you know it's not gonna last forever, you know? So I'm just want to make sure that all my ducks are in a row too. Oh, that's good coffee, I'm done.
I'm still driving 55 Chevys I've had since the 70s. they still run.
Well, if you talk to a financial advisor, they tell you it's your best investment to drive your vehicles into the dirt and then replace them.
It's always worked for me.
Well, I got 2 down in one school.
If we get to a point where maintenance is significantly higher than the value of it, we readdress that then.
I agree with the maintenance, but that's what
The 70,000 that you have on the budget figure is to buy the street sweeper out.
Yeah, that's in our lease agreement, that is what it is, that's how much we pay, then we own it, and then we're responsible for
At that point, we have spent $70,000. We own the street sweeper.
$202,000 street sweeper.
We are going to own all the future maintenance, whatever it may be, for however long it may be.
And we can always trade it in when it's our asset to get another one in the future if that's necessary. But if we turn this one back in, there's no trade-in value for the payments we've made.
Ah, there's the clincher there,
Yeah, we just rented it.
right?
So you take a hit this year of 70,000, next year.
We have an asset of 200,000.
You're gonna have to take a hit on whatever the maintenance is.
But if you release,
And if, I didn't adjust any of this, so this doesn't affect, the buyout would not affect the net deficit of $60 a month.
you buy it out, it's just repairs and maintenance. If you release, you're making lease payments, and they're gonna be greater than 34, because that was the 2018 list. And that was with a buyout.
We gotta think the road project is to be done next year. So it's hard to say what kind of money we'll fix up the street. I don't know. Tough decision.
So the other option is, there really is a third option, which is we don't, or we buy it out and run it, maintain it until it drops, and then we know that you're gonna come up with another couple $100,000 to buy another. We can do that.
Or lease.
Or whatever, but I mean, you have to make a big decision in a year, 2 years, 3 years. 10, I'll feel black on that, but maybe, but
Well, the case is being made, why would we lease? So why would we buy it out now, go 5 years and decide we want to lease again?
Lease to own, I think, is a little different than what we did with this one. So with our new wheel loader and backhoe, we lease to own, that just helps us spread out the payments by the asset. This one, we leased with a buyout to keep our lease payments lower, and I just want to make sure you know, this was the one they chose at the time. We didn't make them choose the cheaper of any options. This is the one they wanted at the time. And we anticipated when we leased it that we would buy it out at the end at the time. But now we're getting recommendations that, you know, it might be better off to turn it back in. But if you do, you're still gonna have lease payments. And you're not gonna have an asset. And what you've paid up until now, the $172,000 or whatever, was
Add on to
just
the
money out the
cost of
window.
a new one.
If we buy it and in 2 or 3 years, we're saying it's costing way too much to repair, we wanna lease another one, we have something we can trade in. I don't remember how much, did we get 6,000 when we surplus the old street sweeper? It's not like they're worth a whole lot, but we had that one for, I wanna say it was a 97 or 98 Pelican, and we started this in 2018.
They could put
So that's
historical
20
plates
years.
on it, that's
we
for
used
sure.
it.
Well, it should be worth more than 6,000.
What was
If it's
20
a
years ago?
$200,000
This one, yeah.
piece of equipment.
I'm gonna go for buying it out.
I guess, sitting here thinking, deal with the loader, if it craps out on an emergency job, we got a problem. There's probably not that many emergency street sweeping jobs.
Right.
That if,
that's a valid point. That's a
that
very
if,
valid point.
if
Yeah.
it does break down and Adam can't get to it for a while, yeah, it's inconvenient, we ought to be driving speed limits and we shouldn't be throwing rocks. So it's not an emergency piece of equipment, so we're not in the same category as a police car or a front-end loader that the water department needs or a
Unless it's
backhoe.
the week before the rally.
Even then, it's not an emergency, that's just frosting on the cake, you know.
When was that big storm with the hail that took everybody's vehicles out? What date was that?
July 5th?
That was May 13th.
My street hasn't been swept since then, so it must not be an
Mine's been swept
emergency.
3 times. No, I'm just kidding.
Craig, mine has been done 4 times.
Mine hasn't. The gravel's still all over the street. It hasn't been up there. So it must not be a big emergency.
Well, it's, you know, if,
I say buy them out.
Yeah, me too.
Have it find out.
Bob, was your consensus from Billy and the others down at the street shop that, to buy out the option, or to,
You want a new one?
to not exercise the option and to lease another one?
They wanted it replaced.
And their thinking was because this is at the point to where it is gonna be some big bucks to keep it running.
They didn't say big bucks, but they did say that it is going to need some repairs, and it has to do with the hydraulics.
Which from
Can I ask a
Craig,
question? Why didn't they have it fixed if it needed repair?
And we still have time to do that while we're under this. We still have 6 months
Well,
left in
if
this
something's
year.
wrong with hydraulics, they need to get them fixed now.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Why wait? I mean,
No, no, you're right, you're correct about that.
so if they know something's wrong with the hydraulics, they should be getting it fixed.
And then we'll buy it out.
I mean, that's a no-brainer.
I think that's what they're doing right now, they're planning on doing that. So I don't think you're right, it is a no-brainer, even for me.
I think we ought to buy it out, especially if they're gonna fix hydraulics. You know, if something's really wrong with it,
Yeah, have them get everything they can fixed under the warranty, and then we'll have a machine that'll last for the next 5 years. With an
Or
asset
longer,
to trade in.
Because we have an excellent mechanic and,
what's our belts then?
well, for 5 years if we're not lucky.
No, it's 5, 7 minutes to 9, so we better decide what we wanna do.
So, you know, I agree, you know, if we still have 6 months left of this lease, have the
It
company
actually goes
fix
through
it.
March.
Does it go through next March?
Yeah, so it'd be
Get it
March of next
fixed.
year, we'd have to buy it out.
And then
Buy it out.
buy it out.
And as Bill says, it's not something that has to be used emergently usually.
And if in 2 years we decide that was the wrong choice, we use this one as a trade-in for the next one and we lease to own.
Right.
And we blame Craig.
That's fine. I probably won't be downside for that.
I hope
You can blame me all you want.
I'll say that.
Okay, so I'm leaving 70 for now?
Yep.
Yep.
And- Yep, and so is this, thank you. Say it as loud as you want. No objections, I think this is where we'll stop for tonight,
Okay.
if everybody's okay with
You
that.
didn't wanna go with the police department yet?
The easy one?
Yeah, that's.
So my request to you